Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lore Ramblings. The name's Adam,
Incit. Uh,
and we're
but
covering, well, a book that it's been a while since we've actually looked at. It's been a good while since we've actually covered Eclipse Phase.
yes,
And
our favorite existential horror.
yeah, because it's essentially existential horror. Um, so, for those of you who might have missed the previous stream, which is entirely possible because we do cover a variety of books, and not every book is everyone's cup of tea. The way Eclipse Phase starts out is that it kind of describes the setting, which is post apocalypse transhumanism. Humanity essentially went through a golden age where things like the soul, flesh, and everything is quantitized. Basically, it's moldable, shiftable, changeable. And then they accidentally skynetted themselves with a fleet of death robots, I think called the Titans,
Yep.
which for no reason, at least as far as anyone can tell, wiped out 90% of humanity. Quarantined the Earth for reasons unknown, and are just kind of in deep space somewhere. No one knows what they're doing. They're not remotely anywhere in the solar system. There's also the capitalist aliens they have to deal with, if I recall.
The factors,
Yep, the
who,
factors which may or may not be part of a scam with them or something.
and who knows, maybe reality itself is entirely fake. The Titans won, and this is just their AI experiment.
Because that's the thing. 90% of humanity is stuck on floppy disks, or well, not floppy disks, but disk drives and shit in random storage areas. It's a nightmare. It
Well,
is a
actually,
complete nightmare.
we have no idea what happened to them. They could be dead. They could be in storage. They could now be an entirely new Gestalt consciousness. Shit's fucked.
Uh, it's so bad that there was I think if was humanity split before this point because we're actually going to look into the different states that formed in the aftermath.
And yes, there wasn't like a unified world government. Pretty much every government that's modern, I guess, still exists. But then, of course, they're no longer here, and they've either migrated to stations or areas in the solar system, or they have now formed entirely new governments.
So yeah, the old systems are gone, and now there's a bunch of new systems. Most of them are centered on space stations, although there's been relatively recent efforts to recolonize planets except Earth because, well,
Because
um,
the Titan remnants are left over there, and you don't want to come back, and it turns out you have a nanovirus on you.
yeah, we covered actually quite a bit of stuff from that. So with that in mind, let's go into the new political economy. So the system is split apart, and it's a big, big, big galaxy. Prior to the fall, blah blah blah. So it's mostly an inner solar system versus outer solar system.
But with the inners being more centralized, more traditional governments, the outer system is where you start getting
The
basically all of the
weirdos.
weird political ideologies that you would see on the internet, to the point where you have anarchists, libertarian socialists, uh, pretty much anything. There's, I think, even a few that are just made out of one person, but in different clone bodies.
It gets weirder the further out you go. From what I understand, the societies that you were talking about are mainly, I think, around the Kuiper Belt.
Yeah, I think most are Kuiper Belt. Uh, so
They
there's a
talk a
few.
little bit about it in part one, but
Yeah,
this is where they go into detail.
there are a few more far out, but everything is pretty much in the solar system.
So, there's a couple of exoplanet discoveries, but I think the reason that you don't go into further details on those are because the gates are relatively are they unstable, or is it just no one knows where they go?
No one knows where it's stargates. No one
Okay.
knows where they go, and the other thing is they have, I believe, they've found planets that have had life on them, or like advanced life. That's gone now, but they have found planets with life on it.
Yeah, that's the disturbing thing. There have been several planets they discovered that had advanced life forms. Had being the keyword. They're gone now. And the only things left behind are either their robotic drones or the factors, which are these colonial organisms selling their archaeological stuff to you.
And I think they have found Titan stuff on there,
On a
which
couple of planets, yes.
again, considering they are nowhere near the solar system, it's only been 10 years. The Titans have faster than light travel or have used these gates.
By the way, hello there, Dark Sun, and hello there, Jim. And Jim has asked, I wonder how much they're going to favor anarchists.
They do, I mean, they do point it as like, yeah, we're, because the designers are anarchists, they believe it's the right way to go. But what is interesting, they do point out the flaws in their system and that the other civilizations, the other governments, they have legitimacy, especially something like the Jovian Republic.
Although I think that's mainly because they got sporked during first edition for being a little too partisan. That I think that's what happened.
Yeah, there were some parts where they really didn't develop and detail out these organizations. They have much more in the second edition.
Speaking of which, the inner systems. So the inner systems, this is where a lot of your infrastructure not necessarily survived. It was rebuilt. Most of transhumanity lives in the inner systems. It's pretty easy to travel between systems either through digital uploading or just going across in spaceships. Most of
Uh,
it is dominated by corporations.
Particularly the Planetary Consortium, which because most organizations that were already off-world were hypercorps, they kind of were able to start up their own government.
So yeah,
And
here's the thing: there were governments. I don't quite. We never quite got to one world system before the Titan incident. I don't know how close we came, but there were nation states. They're
I
gone
would say
now.
this.
They're horribly gone now.
I would say this. The Titans were originally developed by the United States for national security, so
Yeah, I vaguely remembered that. I just didn't remember if we were dealing with kind of a 1984 three nation kind of squabbling system, which is also actually
no,
the background story of I Have No Mouth and Must Scream, actually.
I'm pretty sure it basically is modern civilization continued.
Okay. So the nation state as a concept essentially died when the Titan War began, mainly because what was it? I think in the first 5 hours, the Earth was essentially cleansed and decapitated.
No, no, it
Well, not
took longer.
cleansed, but basically its governments were decapitated within like an hour, a couple hours.
Yeah, they went for the heads of state infrastructure and just nipped it into the bud.
So with that in mind, there were never really any nation states left. There were colonies run by them that were still kind of operating, but most of them were
I,
actually corporate run.
I do know that Israel has an operating habitat. Israel technically still exists.
Yeah, on a technical levels, but in most cases, it's corporations that essentially were bought until they formed the Planetary Consortium.
Uh, and they're stationed primarily around Mars. They want to terraform Mars and set it up as,
Well, the
the
new
new
Earth,
Earth.
because the old Earth was you can go there, but it's just there's so much awful things down there, and it's quarantined and surrounded by an army of drones left behind by the Titans that It's a pain in the butt to get in.
Well,
It's
not just the Titans. I think also it's from humans.
transhumanity too, which they don't control fully anymore because the systems that were governing them are gone.
The other two entities are the Lunar Lagrange Alliance. So that's Earth and Luna and near Earth. And the Morningstar constellation, which is Venus, which declared independence from the consortium.
So yeah, the Lunar Lagrange Alliance is actually much more of a real government because it's not full on hypercorporate run by the system, run by this business system. This one's actually more of a government. Meanwhile, Venus, it it's run by Morningstar Constellation, which is looking very much along the lines of their anarchist support concept. At the very
It's
least,
yeah,
it is very close to either a syndicalist point of view, where it's a workplace democracy run by basically the variety of workplaces, or it's or well, kind of a narco-communist.
no,
Not quite.
it's a
It's more
it's a progress
something else.
it's a progressive confederacy. Still, I think has corporate involvement, but they treat a lot of the more um, hot topic social issues such as uplifts and having
Okay, so
life
it's still
existing on a
corporate run.
format.
Okay, I was thinking it went.
Kind
I
of.
was thinking it went anarchist just because they don't really go into it being business run.
No, it's. I mean, they declared independence, so there's more of a political issue than an economic issue there.
By the way, happy birthday, Primarch. I'm glad that you're having fun with this one already. So,
I guess
meanwhile, the outer system, only one third of humanity lives out here, but there is a draw to it. There's a very big draw to it. Some of it's resource based because, well, it's not like the inner system's dried out from resources, but there's certain resources that you can only get in the outer system. For example, in real science fiction terms, this would be where you get most of your helium-3, which is very useful for rocket propulsion. Yeah, that's pretty primitive by what transhumanity can do now, but it's still kind of the mainstay of basic stuff when it comes to just getting around to places. And the big boy here is the Jovians. There's also the Titanian Commonwealth. Now,
uh,
for the Jovians, they're the remnants of, from what I understand, the Russian military.
no, North and South America,
Ah, the North and
and the
South
Catholic
American
Church,
military. Okay.
and Catholic and Catholicism.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I remember now. It's I'm a little rusty on the lore. So here's what happened when the Titan War was really into swing and the governments were decapitated. That essentially that also destroyed the military's organization. The ones that were stationed out in Jupiter essentially realized things were screwed and formed a junta. They then proceeded to liquidate, I believe it was the Russian and Chinese assets on in the system, and formed
Yes,
a new state, which is very
which
much a pretty much a fascist state. You could argue
no, not
it's more like Salazar's kind of weird integralist Portugal in a way,
it, it's a junta. It's a military government. It has a constitutional framework, but it it's a military government essentially. That their main draw is that they are bioconservative, which
which
straight up
that's an
means
actual politic. The concept is very simple. Those who have gone through the chop and uploaded their brains, they're not human anymore. Like to the point where they're not even alive. They're replicants. They're horrifying, soulless monstrosities.
because all of this and there's no AI, there's no nanotech, there's no
Which
uplifts.
is a relatively reasonable point of view in the aftermath of a death war against evil robots.
It's entirely a rational reaction to what's happening.
Now, the
Because
problem is, on the one hand, this is where the largest concentration of military might survive. On the other hand, because they're not transhuman and, can't essentially digitize their brain, they're falling behind technologically speaking just because they don't have the tech advantages that allow for certain things to be built or certain tasks to be done more efficiently.
At the same time, they will probably, if things just go completely tits up, they probably will be the one that will be able to blow everything up.
Yeah,
And
because they have the largest military remnants, which while humanity has recovered, still think that the technology, at least military-wise, was still a little bit higher back before the war than after.
and there's also the fact, who's funding it?
That's the other thing. The Jovians basically put a lot of their resources into this. Constitutional junta, well, yeah, Jim. It has a constitution, but that doesn't really matter. It's either toothless or it's just not applied. It's similar to how, hilariously, the Soviet Union had a very progressive constitution under Stalin. It just didn't matter because he never actually let it run. He just did it for propaganda purposes. I'm not kidding. If you look up the Stalin Constitution, it almost looks like maybe it could have been a democracy. It's not. It's not.
I mean, it just honestly, it's a military government. They'll allow a constitution, they'll allow political input, but if the military says no, it's done.
So, besides the Jovians, there's again a bunch of people forming their own weird little statelets. The largest of them that's not the Jovians I mentioned was the Titanium Commonwealth, which is a techno-socialist direct democracy, which basically means that to do anything, it's put to a vote.
Now, do bear in mind, with the instantaneous communication, you can get a vote done very easily.
Well, very quickly. So, direct democracy actually isn't a complete shit show because of improvements in communications and the fact that in a lot of cases there's a bunch of people kind of essentially hot bunking on digital matrix apartments, kind of. Because besides those that are lost in their weird disk drives forever, there's those that are still, they don't have bodies because there is a body crunch. That's another thing. Um, there's less bodies than people. So a lot of them are hot bunking on servers. Besides that, there's also the swarms of essentially, they're the Quarian fleet, basically.
The Corian fleet mixed with hedonists,
There's
as they
also the anarchist communes of the asteroid belt.
are, well, in the lines of anarchists.
Yeah, in this case, it's a type of anarchy that essentially exploits It's trading cities that essentially are run by communities.
And then they don't talk about it, but I believe it's on Neptune, Pluto. There is this faction called the Ultimates, which basically are people that say, let's be both Outer Heaven from Metal Gear and Space Marines.
Oh yeah, they talked about the Ultimates earlier in the book. I do remember that. They don't go into huge detail with them, but I think they do mention them.
I guess moving on then is to talk about the economics,
Well,
because
there is one more faction. There is the Autonomous Alliance, which again is which again is kind of their pet faction a bit, at least partially, because that's the one they agree with. That is essentially what they kind of agree with.
it's what they prefer, but do bear in mind, only a third of humanity lives outside there. It's they make a point that kind of the anarchist living is well difficult. What they prefer, but most people probably would prefer the comfort and safety of you know traditional government and traditional economy.
Mainly because to make an anarchist commune work, you actually have to have everyone give a shit about propping it up. That's actually a lot harder than you think. There's a reason why most communes eventually fail. and it's mainly because people just stop giving a shit. Or ultimately, what happens is you get power does eventually seem to delegate into a few people's hands, either due to ambition or just being able to know and get favors from people.
Yeah, well, they kind of have a way to resolve that, and it's called the rep economy. It's because again, if you can fabricate everything, you kind of really don't need money. So how do you, I guess,
Well, yeah, you have reputation, but
yeah.
there's a certain point where it doesn't matter if you could just get onto their chips and essentially install a mind control virus or something. Look, I'm just saying that one of the biggest problems with because at the end of the day, anarchism still kind of relies a bit on this utopian way of thinking. When the rubber hits the road, the wheels do come off usually.
Well, don't worry. You can always just edit the minds of the people there to be trained to favor more cooperative government.
I will make you care.
Yes, I guarantee you there's
because
probably
because that is
someone
the
that does
that is
that.
the biggest problem. That is one of the biggest problems when you're dealing with commune systems like that. People communally have to kind of give a shit and participate. So, as a whole, the transhumanity is in a bit of a cold war at this point. And it's not just between inner and outer. It's actually between because there's the consortium. The consortium is not a fan of the autonomists, mainly because, well, it's a hyper corporate state, big business, and the type of anarchism these guys are ascribed to are very much in the socialist point of view. So they're the types that want to abolish a system like the consortium, which, let's be fair, a hypercorporatist state is also kind of a nightmare state. Mainly because in systems like that, you can get things as great as you have to literally pay for air. You have to pay an air tax.
I
No, no,
mean,
and better
it's
yet, there's
simple.
brands of air that you have to pick.
No, that's simple. Just don't be in a body.
No, but then you have to determine then you have all the contracts between which internal shells you have to be a part of.
Yep.
Like it's one of the things with hypercorporate states is it is all about making money and exploiting people in little ways without destroying their ability to pay for things because they have to keep paying you money so that you the business makes money. You know, it's kind of weird when the horrifying dystopia understands business better than modern entertainment does today. Isn't that weird?
Uh, Yeah. Well, I
Like
mean,
the
they have they
hyper-corporatist
have
nightmare.
actual they have actual AIs, so they may actually be using intelligence, unlike modern entertainment corporations.
Oh, come on, ChatGPT can write a lot better than half of the writers that are currently on strike.
Just half?
Let's be fair, some of them are probably at least sort of competent and are ruined by either production or the directors they hire.
Yeah, fair.
It takes multiple people to screw up as bad as the entertainment industry has. So again, multipolar Cold War because the outer system also very much hates the inner system to a degree, mainly because the inner systems are a lot more organized. And there is a very strong draw to not being controlled by a hypercorporatist nightmare, a weird kind of techno-socialist progressive corporate nightmare, or just dealing with a republic that constantly annoys you for vote for X or vote against Y.
Or the
There is an
guys.
appeal to people who are like, I just leave me the fuck alone. And meanwhile, in the outer system, it's everyone versus the Jovians because the Jovians basically look at everyone else and go, "You are not human. You're stains upon the legacy." Legitimately, they see transhumanity as a whole, the Jovians, in the same light as the Titans, essentially.
Because
At any point, they can just go, like, what's to say that the digitized people won't just do what the Titans did?
I mean, think about it. What's the best way to preserve yourself from being infected by a uh, computer virus? I don't know, not be a computer.
Also, they've read things like Dr. Moreau. Do you really want to trust an ape to, actually not rebel against its creators?
I mean,
Because
that's the
we've
one thing
created
that's.
life before. It went horribly wrong.
I mean, that is. I mean, that to them is probably a reaction of like we are disturbing the natural world.
Because again, there
Uh,
is a religious element to the Jovians as well. It's not a huge element, but there's a faction of it.
at the same time, I would like to have, you know, some uplifted monkeys that believe in creationism.
That does sound really fun. Now, despite this, it's a Cold War for a reason, because when a lot of humanity is united under corporations, well, you know what's really important to corporations? Money, profit. So you might dislike a state, or dislike the people, or the people out there might dislike you, but there's a certain benefit in being able to trade for goods that you yourself can't make. On top of that, while the Jovians despise everyone around them, they're still religious, and there are those in their society that see, like, even these weird transhumanist monsters might have a soul. They might not be human anymore, but maybe their soul, or what copy of it they have, might be salvageable.
I mean, they do make a point that a lot of Firewall, the guys that kind of are proactive against Titans and other nefarious entities in the solar system, a lot of them do come from the Jovian Republic. Because those are the guys that are kind of focused on preventing the apocalypse from returning.
Well, yeah, because they'd be screwed otherwise. So the thing is, there's the old market, which relies on essentially just humans doing best judgment. There's no augmentation of your brain. You might have some form of a level of AI, although not to the level of anything else. It is much more like the economies of systems you'll see today, which means it reacts slower. It can't be treated as quickly, and on
There's
top
also
of
the
that,
fact,
they can't use fabricators. They just can't. Legitimately, it goes against their principles
I mean, you can pay for it, you can't, you know,
because
use it.
that's kind of part of their religious point of view.
Well, no, no, it's not.
And
These are
also
the
pragmatically, it's a
economies.
case of what was it?
These are the economies. So it's not just the Jovian Republic. This is the Lunar Lagrange Alliance.
Well, they actually can fabricate as well. They can fabricate though.
Yeah, they both can, but it's tightly controlled, so it really is emphasizing the scarcity of resources idea.
Oh yeah, because that I think is designed to reduce temptation.
Would be temptation to reduce the risk of developing a Titan weapon,
Yeah, because
or
with
just
what?
again corporations trying to be greedy.
Well, there's also yeah, that's part of it, greedy corporations. But yeah, you also mentioned another point. If you can just kind of 3D print anything, it's really easy to it's really easy for rebel groups to just be able to digitally print weapons. So there's a bit of a resource control market element to it too. Meanwhile, transitional economies are basically a mixture of the old market, but also dealing with the modern replication systems that humanity had.
So
It's your Star Trek economies where scarcity. What's that?
yeah, you know, actually,
All you need is energy packets, which you can get from the sun. All you have to do is just energy packets from the sun, or from nuclear reactors, or exotic particle reactors that might have been invented.
so it is limited. Like basic stuff can be fabricated, but more complex stuff, like if you wanted maybe like to make your own computer, that's going to cost you.
Well, yeah, because that's how these corporate nightmares make their money.
And of course, remember, you also have to buy the subscription so that you can actually use the computer you've made.
I
If
just
you built it,
like how just for some reason I do like how in this page they just use the word sad exclamation mark twice in 2 paragraphs at the same time.
because I'm pretty sure this is an AI,
Ah.
because it says at the beginning, greetings, $ firewall underscore recruit.
So
It's an AI.
they actually go into some interesting little side notes, like how the Morningstar legitimately has banned further services, mainly because one of the things you can do in transhumanist space is if you have the blueprints for it and there's no regulation, you can just fabricate your own nuclear warhead
And
very easily. Very easy too. Like the schematics are up there.
I mean, it's like 3D printing a firearm right now.
You could also 3D print anthrax. Yeah, there is some logical understanding on why you might want to put restrictions on what you can produce. Because this is a system where a dude in the shed can unironically build a fusion reactor just casually. Because all you have to do is just download the 3D blueprints and essentially pay for the energy packets or have the energy on hand to just fabricate it. They also have intellectual property rights as an element.
Which, I mean, if you think about it, that probably would be one of the most important commodities.
So in the anarchist system, it's your reputation. And while to a degree corporations have that too, corporations also have intellectual properties. If you're the only one that can make, let's see, if you're the only one that can make a certain type of water scrubber, essentially waste product scrubber to recycle, product, that gives you a lot of influence in that area because you have to pay for my subscription to recycle your dirty bath water to re-drink it. You just have to. Like, there's no one else on the market that has it. Or let's say you have a specific designer body you like. Well, the company that makes it, well, you have to pay them. You have to pay them the subscription to be able to use that body or to print that body or should I say morph. And depending on what system you're in really determines how intellectual property works. The consortium, for example, very strict on it, mainly because that's how they make their money. While in Morningstar, if it's different enough, it's actually similar to how rights can kind of be avoided in entertainment. Like, do you want to know, for example, why you'll never see the Hulk in a solo movie again?
Why?
Because Universal actually has to also okay a Hulk movie,
Oh,
which was fine when Marvel was its own movie studio. It was less fine when Disney bought them, since they compete too much. And
and
that's why you
because you
only ever see the Hulk in crossovers.
and because they gave up those rights.
Oh no, it's what happened with Stan the Man Lee gave the rights to Universal. He actually gave a lot of stuff to Universal. Some of it
Remind,
spun out of it back into Marvel Studios' hands, but the Hulk and Namor the Submariner are two that are still partially belonging to them. Although Namor, I think, is also belonging to a third company, which is why they couldn't actually ever use the Avenging Sun, so they had to invent the weird Mayan Aztec version where he has no love in Black Panther 2 Electric Boogaloo.
which admittedly is pretty interesting,
It
but we
would
are
be
missing out on the real thing.
it would be if he was it would be if it was written well. But anyway, I'm just pointing out like that is an example of intellectual property in our imagine that but in transhumanist situations. That's
Or
kind of how Morningstar works.
for instance, another one, Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings is owned by a different company than everything else that Tolkien has made.
Oh, to give you an idea, the reason Rings of Power came out the way it did was entirely because they only had the rights to the appendices. Because Amazon was stupid and bought the wrong rights.
Well, no, because they can.
No,
Well, because
no,
I think
they thought they got more rights than they did. No, they only got the rights to the appendices. They actually had a big shit storm about that.
New Line owns the rights to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Specifically, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that. So imagine that. Imagine if you're in this timeline and you wanted to recreate the entire Legendarium in like a video game or something like
Oh,
that.
I remember now.
You
The
could.
reason what happened is Amazon thought they bought the rights to the Silmarillion, which does include a lot of the other stuff. They didn't. They realized too late they only bought the rights to the appendices.
And then also realize this: if let's say the owner of the copyright died in the fall, and the computer systems haven't like it hasn't changed hands or anything, yeah, you're fucked on getting that unless you break copyright, which is super illegal and would never be done by anyone.
And this also applies to transhumanity. Just like these are examples that you can apply from our real world, and it would work perfectly fine in the consortium and in Morningstar. Oh no, you accidentally you bought the right to this old play that was made before the Titan War. Oh no, you didn't actually. You bought a specific version of the play. So you can't use the specific version you want because that's actually owned by another corporation.
Or think about this:
Who
uh,
who can send
people are,
actual kill squads to stop you if you try to perform it?
people are now immortal. How does copyright work if it's lifetime of the creator?
Yep, that's another problem. Which is why it's actually essentially a pain in the butt to do anything. And what happens in these systems instead is the copyright I think is leased, at least for the right price.
Well, anything can be bought.
That too. You can also just buy the rights, although that's a pain in the butt.
I guess next is the hypercorporations,
Yep,
and
hyper corporations are essentially so big that they are corporations that legitimately transcend a planet. They are so large and powerful, and they have so many industries under lock and key that it's essentially a state.
well, those are the big ones. In actuality, I'm not sure why they're using the term hypercorporations. I guess to differentiate from a regular corporation, because
I
they do
don't know.
say
I don't
that
know either because when I think of a normal corporation is what they're describing. I think you should save hypercorporations for the largest of them that essentially are their own state. Like, unironically, the British East India Company could have been seen as a hypercorporation
yeah.
because it had its
Uh,
own army system, its own navy, actually. If it wasn't dissolved, it would have had its own air force. If it was still around in the 20th century, it would have had its own air force.
so hypercorporations they rely on AI, automation, freelancers. They don't really have that many physical assets. Um, so
You don't need a lot of physical assets because, well, it's literally just replaceable.
um,
Ideas and the ability to replicate and produce are much more important.
so it's almost like just the corporation itself is the asset, not the things it owns.
Well, I mean, if you basically are in post scarcity, you don't really need anything else, technically.
Yeah.
Look at this cute little kind of a little miniature O'Neill cylinder sort of thing.
Why is it hovering above Coruscant?
I think that's supposed to be Mars or maybe
I'm
Venus.
pretty actually probably Mars.
Also, kind of looks like Venus because the cloud cover. Hey, fun fact, did you know that unironically, it started as a shit post, but apparently scientists are more and more of the mind that out of the planets, it's actually possibly easier to terraform Venus than it would have been Mars.
Because it has an atmosphere, right?
because the trick with Venus is you just have to get the greenhouse effect under control and essentially scrub out some of the excess atmosphere because it's too dense. With Mars, it's more that it's a bitch and a half because it's too low gravity and there's no magnetosphere, so you just have the atmo get blown out. And on top of that, Mars is a nuclear desert. Legitimately, Mars is the worst aspect of a desert and also a radioactive wasteland.
I hate how it's going to take so much effort to make colonies outside of Earth. I
Indentures. The fall
want space
removed many
empire.
billions of individuals from the economy. Most of these individuals are irrecoverable. Sad.
These are
So,
called infugees.
yeah, NVGs are basically those that don't have bodies. This got brought up in part one, but yeah, there's less morphs than there are people.
There's also the issue of the fact that these individuals they have no marketable skills, no possessions or family relations, and are suffering from, well, post-traumatic stress disorder.
And other mental illnesses from being trapped inside of their shells for so long.
Nothing a little pruning can't take care of. But of course, these services can be offered by a hypercorporation for a contract of, well, maybe a few years of 24/7 labor. Uh,
Because you don't need to sleep. That can be edited out of your system.
yeah. And we can give you your new body. Uh, just as long
You can
as,
pay a
well,
mortgage on your new body.
as long as you don't make a mistake in your work, otherwise the contract resets. You do want the body, right?
Yeah, and that's what an indenture is. It's awful, but
Slavery,
sadly, it is one of the few ways that it's one of the few ways you can get you can guarantee to get a morph though.
except you're now an immortal slave.
Yeah.
Although you would think that, well, you would need people to buy products from these hypercorporations, so you would let them go. But then
Well,
again, you could also put in the
well, the
contract that
initial
you have to
con
buy.
well, the initial concept is your labors and doing things are supposed to essentially count because remember they give you the cheapest synthesoid body, which if you're wondering, there's a variety of morphs that we covered in part one. There are your standard human style templates, which can be augmented in a variety of ways. There's a few odd forms that are extremely rare. Like I think there's like a legitimate super soldier build that's extremely rare due to it being developed during the Titan War and also being kind of banned because of how crazy the people in those morphs tend to become.
There's also the one that makes you look like a child.
Oh yeah, which is specifically what was that one for again?
Neotonics. Oh, for groomers. But,
Oh, awful,
well,
horrible.
actually, no, that does have a genuine purpose in if you are living in a small, cramped area, you will take up less space.
Yeah, I mean that's the initial concept. I think it also works well in space environments as well, just because
Good as,
low gravity.
um, you know what
But
also works better than that? Metal will put you in a square box.
so okay, there's your human style morphs, which are genetic templates that you upload your consciousness into. There are also animal style bodies, which you're not an uplift. You just use an animal clone vat body. This happens sometimes. It's not really that common though. What's a lot more common are what are called synthomorphs, which are a variety of robotic shells. And there's one type of model in particular that corporations really prefer putting into people because they are dirt cheap to make. They're called efficiency models. They're big boxy clunky fucking things. And that's why there's an actual term for the people that are strapped in them, the clanking masses, because this is where most of humanity is trapped in. And they are effectively trapped because you don't have the resources to get a new body besides this one, buddy.
Or the rights.
Oh no.
You sold those away.
One last variant of synthomorph that you can run into are you essentially connect server farms where it's like the cheap, shitty apartments of the future, where your all of your where your internal consciousness is uploaded into this weird like digital thing. Neotenics, the
So you can,
darkness behind Eclipse Phase.
so you can also be a giant crab robot,
Oh yeah, there's other synthomorph forms. They don't have to be humanoid.
which to be honest, that's the trade-off.
And again, you can also, if you just say, you could just say "fuck it," I am become a dolphin, and you can become a dolphin.
You can also become a giant whale that flies across the sun.
That's an actual morph. That's a real genetically modified morph that can do that.
And there are pods, which are kind of synthetic, but I think they have either like a plastic or like a flesh kind of uh,
There are the cyborg
covering.
parts, kind of, yeah, where it's like there's an organic. It's like basically it's the compromise between flesh and machine metal because metal's a lot cheaper to uphold because,
And
well, you see, flesh requires resources outside of just energy.
there's also the fact that if you are metal, you don't have to worry about those organs taking up space. So you could put in things like guns, recording devices, bombs, and other such things.
So here's the thing: not all indentures are infugees. Some just are offered contract labor. Debt slavery has become a thing again, and it is slavery by another name. There's also freelancers, which these are people that don't have to. These are people who don't sign their rights away. These ones are actually quite valuable for companies because usually freelancers have specialist training and equipment.
I honestly, these would be the middle class.
There's not many of them, but they're very useful. And then last but not least, oligarchs and dynasties. Yeah, if everyone's immortal, you can't inherit. So what happens instead is you get horrendous petty politics from entire family clan lines.
And the shit ton of money that comes with it.
Um,
Because now you don't have to worry about short-term goals. You can worry about long-term economic growth.
Either because the head of this corporate dynasty is still kicking and still ambitious, or you can't really be a rich playboy, or you can't really be the rich wastrel. You can, but it's
Well,
not going to get you anywhere ever.
well, you can, but the fork of you can be that. Well, you go off partying,
Oh, and that's another thing you can do. You can literally fork your consciousness and to make a bunch of clones.
which there's a
S
whole bunch of problems with that.
What are you talking
Because
about? It's literally my own clone. Now neither of us can be virgins.
no, it's this. Because you can edit them. You can create a version of yourself that is entirely subservient to you, will not rebel, and does all the manual labor for you, and is happy to do so.
What's more creepy is a person who single-handedly builds an entire society using their own mind as a template and literally changing the personality traits as they go along to make its own society. Like, yes, I literally became my own god. To
There is
me.
actually one crime syndicate that is that it is all one person, but different, forks, clones, um, actual genetic offspring, made by a male and female version of the original person, uh, and other such things. So it's literally a crime family where yes, everyone can trust everyone.
The new economy. So, yeah, the new economy is gift is a thing. Gifting is very common. Fabrication, again, it's open source, blah blah blah. The only thing you really need to expend in this economy, the only resource besides reputation, is energy. You just need to have the energy to run a fabricator, and there you go.
And well, since there's that big ball of flame in the sky 24/7, or not in the sky, in space, yeah, you can easily collect that.
Yeah, I mean you can also build, I guess, wind farms on Jupiter or something.
Oh wow, yeah, that
Take advantage of those gajillion miles an hour storms.
um
Yeah,
and
currency's not a thing in this setting. There's no point.
and either property. A personal property is still there, but anything that you kind of can use, anything that's not something that you've
Oh,
probably
oh
either
yeah,
made
these are the
yourself.
autonomous. This is the writer. This is where the writers actually go into their thinking and on the optimism of anarchism
Um,
a little bit.
Again, everything's communal, and to be quite honest, on like a if you're
Although
on a
I
very
will
small
grant in a
habitat,
post I will grant on a post scarcity society that this is a lot more viable. Mainly because you get rid of several of the motives that usually fuck over communes from functioning.
but what yeah, and you have cooperative work and all that, and the way you enforce it is through reputation. It basically is, I mean, it is a credit check on your trustworthiness.
There is just one element though that I find kind of disturbing is just they try to say, oh no, like you don't have to share your underwear, you have personal possessions, but they draw the line at houses. Like even if it's a shitty little habitat module, that's where they're like, no, you're evil.
Well, I think in this case they're talking more about like,
I'm just wondering how many of these anarchists would be okay with bunking with people they fucking hate because they don't have private property anymore.
well, that's the thing.
Because in a commune, you're gonna run into people you fucking hate, and well, imagine
Well,
having to deal with those assholes all the time because you're hot bunked with
the
them.
the idea is reputation. So if you do say, yeah, I'll let someone be in my room that I despise, you get positive reputation for that, which facilitates you cooperating even though you personally dislike the person.
Okay, but you have to essentially like imagine having to constantly deal with that person for a long time.
I mean, hopefully then you learn to
Look,
treat each
look,
other
look.
kindly.
I'm gonna be real with you. Eventually, you're gonna want to silently get rid of them somehow,
Yeah, but murder's not a problem. They can just get a new body.
and then they'll immediately go right back to your habitat because guess what? No private property. You can't stop them. It's
Yeah, there are.
basically, and then the cat came back the very next day.
Yeah, there are problems with it, and I believe they do go into it in the role of in the reputation section.
There's again also the issue of again you also require some passion, but thankfully again in post scarcity economies you don't have to worry about some of the modifiers that usually affect that ability to care and try. Mainly because the bar to actually running an effective community, like an actual anarchist community, becomes a lot easier if you can just fabricate what you fucking need. That's usually what sinks most communes, by the way, is just the work required among everyone. You're going to run into what are called lumpen proles, and you're going to have to kick them out, and eventually you just run out of manpower. And then there's those who are just like, get sick of that sort of shit, you know?
And yeah, I mean, with eco casting, yeah, if you're sick of this place, they can freely kick you out to another one.
Until you're eventually a commune of one, gibbering alone to the underpants gnome that you built to talk to. I'm just pointing out, like, there are flaws, and
Oh
I
no,
think they do bring them up.
yes, they do. Um, they say here,
Yep, like I
uh,
said, there's issues with cooperative works, but
they,
anyway, reputation
it,
very important.
they say here it rewards pro-social behavior, but it does have its flaws. There are a lot of reasons an individual might not get the rep they deserve: an uncouth manner, unpopular political views, public failures, modesty, overzealous privacy, unsavory morphological features, the issue of social cliques, The fact that bad actors can use sock puppets to game the system,
Yep.
um, it can spike at particular events. Uh, so they do point out there are issues with it, but the central goal, I think, is, at least for the anarchists, how do we ensure that people are going to want to work together without using force, which would be use social pressure.
Which again leads to one of the big issues is societal pressure. In my experience, does eventually lead to a stratification.
And it
Power
does,
does have
but
a bad habit of accumulating.
you could possibly, well, if they start accumulating power in anarchist system, even if they do have good rep, you could start, you know, harming their reputation if they're getting too powerful. Um, I assume also if they are getting too powerful,
That's when editing your personality when you're asleep becomes a thing.
that's what a backup's for as well. So you have a backup that's made whenever you detect that you're being edited, kill yourself and go back to the other edit, ping their rep, and then kill them.
That's of course if you don't fuck it up. See, at the end of the day, I think my biggest issue is there's a very optimistic, oh, we can totally resolve these problems when I
I
don't
mean, I
know.
would, I mean, yeah, they definitely are being utopian on it, but I do like the fact that they do point out there are definite problems with this.
Well, that's my experience with anarchists. Are they do mention the problems, but then they're like, "But don't worry, guys, we can totally make it work." You know, with hope and a prayer, ignoring things like apathy, stratification that will naturally occur just because of the imbalances of a person's personality and ability to do things.
One
Um,
thing that might help in this case is the fact that these places can be isolated. So
well,
you
there's a reason why they
you're
mention the
stuck together.
autonomists are so fucking popular out in the outer rim. And also, there's a reason they highlight that these seem to work best when you're dealing with effectively small tribes and clans. Which unironically is where you get the closest to anarchism is when you go back to the hunter-gatherer society. Just because populations are so small that as a whole you're much less likely to run into that stratification problem.
So
Now,
there are
not all autonomists are of the socialist bent. There is a strain of thought in anarchism which basically rejects that. ANCAPs. Yeah, extropians are an example of ANCAPs, and here's a flesh market. I'm going to not look at that one. It is legitimately a flesh market.
I I have no idea what the fuck's going on in this one.
Flesh market. Oh no, it's just a weird type of pole dancing, I think.
Zero gravity pole dancing
Yeah, there we go. It's not a flesh market. It's just pole dancing. We're okay.
with two edgy punks, a woman that
Well, no, you
clear
have two different strippers. There's the robot spider stripper, and then there's the other stripper.
in the maid outfit, and the other one that clearly has daddy issues.
And then there's the guy who's like, "Have you seen my god? Here's my god. He's bald." So here's the thing: in the post-future, when society is broken down, how do you keep the peace?
Well, depends.
It really does
Uh,
depend on the systems.
at least they are. One
Now,
good thing is they don't
the
seem to
way
be complete.
Now, the way the autonomists work are traditionally, this is one of the other aspects about about an anarchist system. You do need to, you're supposed to be obligated to essentially serve as a militia slash lawman in your own right to a degree, because I mean you're working as a community. That also means you're part of your own community watch traditionally. That's at least from the autonomous point of view. The consortium usually uses corporate security. The Jovians pretty much have their own secret police force. And I think Lunar Lagrange just legitimately has police. It really just depends on the. It just really depends on the system you're in. Do they
Speaking
actually
of
go
that,
into the different laws?
not really. Though before we do that, do we want to go back up and talk, go over the day in the inner and outer system?
Not really, but I mean, personally, I don't really see it.
Sure.
It's particularly. Well, maybe it gives you a bit of insight.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So, like for the inner system, guy wakes up at 6 a.m. It's a contract job, and uh, he does his work. His Hypercorp immediately gets bought out, like 4 hours in, so he has to get a new job.
Which
Um,
can happen.
yep. Then he goes
I think it's a
to
little too casual how quickly that Hypercorp was bought. Mainly because, again, since they use Hypercorporation for everything, because it's more of a nation than a state, it kind of ruins the meaning.
yeah.
If it was just like a normal corporation gets bought by Hypercorp, I have to find new job because became redundant.
They do like this. Um, they uh, they spot an X at the club, and so they go into privacy mode and use AR to blank them from your sensory input. You just block out seeing them. Um, then for the outer system, they wake up at 10 a.m. from their polycules shared module. Um, you know, basically mostly relax throughout the day, design art, help out people, um, use a create a goop gun and shoot it out in space. Uh, then have sex with a random stranger and crash at 4 a.m.
Which I'm going to disagree. This is very much a 1E sort of thing. This feels like.
Probably in a
I'm
way.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the very much. This one feels a little bit like a hammer to a. I don't
Oh
know.
my, oh
It,
my God! They the inner system they have to work, while in the outer system we could be hedonists.
which yeah, since you're working in a smaller group and there's no regulations, I guess. But this just feels. It just makes me hate the outer system a bit more. Just the way it's written. Also, you're in the Also, you're. Oh, the Trojans, which are a type of asteroid. Okay.
No, they're not in. They're not in
Oh, yeah,
the
that would
Trojan
be
Republic.
very different.
Yeah,
I'm just not a particularly big fan because this just feels a bit hacky, if you get what I mean.
it does. I honestly I feel like they probably should point out. I feel like something they should say is a lot of autonomous groups get started, and like Hypercorps, they
They fail.
fail easily.
Because they do. Either because again, the biggest problems are passion, because that's a thing that you need to actually run one effectively. Like you need everyone in the community to actually kind of give a shit for it to work. Which let me tell you, that's pretty hard to foster. Especially if you're in a post society, if you're in a post transhuman world, like locked up in your own hedonistic struggles. Yeah, I'm just
Then moving,
I'm not a big fan of that page. I feel like it's just kind of hackish.
yeah, kind of is. I guess moving back then to law.
I kind
Um,
of covered it.
they do state with interstate affairs. There's really only one thing, which is the Treaty of Uniform Security, which uh, targets a class of extremists that everyone would want to punish, which are those who damage critical habitat infrastructure, collaborate with Titan agents, and spread the exurgent virus, which
We covered
are
a little bit,
viruses.
but
They're
ec-
viruses that can infect you either as a infomorph, as a robot, or as a humanoid.
so let
Cause
me.
either like
Okay.
mutations, corruption. sleeper agents, that sort of thing.
I was actually going to talk about that. So, for those of you who didn't know, so the exsurgent virus is not one specific type of virus. It's an entire class. They were created likely by the Titans, possibly by the transhumans to fuck over the Titans. The source doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, there are a series of viruses that almost work like the SCP viruses.
I mean,
They're
yeah,
pretty nasty.
a lot of them are mimetic in nature. If you've ever heard of the basilisk, which if you have, um, is or haven't, it's the idea that there's a machine in the future that, because
You're
we've
really
thought of
going
it,
to explain a mimetic virus with that fucking thing?
uh, I don't know, it's because there is one thing called a basilisk hack. Basically,
I think a better example is there's a great SCP. There's a great skip, which is this kind of cultural phenomenon meme where it's a fictional country located in around the Anatolia region. That's like a poor war torn area, and if you hear anything about it, you start wanting to spread the idea of that state. Like you talk about it, and other people start believing it's real.
no, no,
There's
no, no,
also the other one where it's like a
yeah,
fake apocalypse that
no,
basically
no,
makes
no, no,
people believe it's real, and
no,
it
you're wrong about
self-confirms.
that. It's the mimetic hazard that makes people forget that Eastern Samothrace exists.
Oh yeah, that's the one. That's the thing it's called. So
No,
yeah,
no, it's both. It's literally both. No one knows.
either way, it's a mimetic virus that spreads by that. Exurgent viruses can do this. They don't necessarily have to spread via traditional contact.
Someone
And
says, "Hey, take
yeah,
a look at
it's
this
nasty.
image," and bam, you're infected.
It's really they're really nasty shit. And again, it's not known if the Titans made them for those who tried to go back to Earth or just in other areas they controlled, or if the remnants of the Earth governments did as a way to try to stop them. Could be both, honestly.
So it basically is existential threats are treated as
Like, let's say you try to destroy a very important communications network just because you're a Luddite, weird, and prim guy. They can get you. Every person in that system, in the entire systems, will get you.
because I mean it would be like, well, an individual today having a nuclear weapon. No one wants that.
And again, if people think that you're an agent of the Titans, I mean, they literally almost wiped out humanity. A lot of these transhumans are traumatized from the incident, the fall.
You're also then literally
Almost
saying I
certainly
wanted to,
corrupted.
and basically saying I want to destroy everyone.
I'm going to destroy the Krusty Krab, says the Titan agent before he gets arrested by everyone in Bikini Bottom.
Um, the the other, I guess, issues of interstate would be ego hunters because, well, if you can change your body, how does someone know what you look like?
So, yeah, these are the guys who specialize in profiling your personality and just knowing who and where you are just based on what you do. And while it is a pain in the ass to capture someone, it's not impossible.
Because eventually, there's really nowhere to run.
It also doesn't help that because of the proliferation of technology, it's really easy to get evidence.
Surveillance, obviously, if you're logged on to the internet all the time, kind of easy to see you. Um,
Identity
although
issues are a big thing because you can be anyone, especially if you change your personality.
there are areas that do have it. Uh, obviously, morphs having IDs, the Sapient ID by the Lunar Lagrange Alliance and the Planetary Consortium. But Yeah, there really is no real way of doing it. I mean, you can even, instead of casting your mind on the normal channels, you can use, I guess, the future dark web
Yeah,
and
that's called
cast it
dark
there.
casting, by the way.
It's literally the dark web.
So, and as for how prosecution and punishment works, so a lot of polities actually maintain standard criminal justice system. But let's see, do they go into details about how the others go? Either
Yeah,
way, people who basically get caught and tried, um, executions are not a big. They're basically a big no-no now. So instead, what they'll do is just psychologically just demolish and stitch you back together.
um, morphs can be seized because that's not your body; it's property.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And yeah, they can do psychic surgery on habitual reoffenders, which
Which, if you're wondering, is similar to I think it's very similar to Cyberpunk 2020 in that regard, where that is legitimately how they handle therapy for the most part, except in very progressive countries like Switzerland.
it is essentially a lobotomy.
It also is essentially editing your personality horrendously.
Though there is a question of, well, these people are net negative on society, and their behaviors are not just against society, but are detrimental to humanity in general.
Prisons are pretty rare. Only the Jovians really use them. Although hypercorporations usually do have small prisons, mainly for the biggest offenders that just genuinely, yeah.
So,
Prisons are
the
small and relatively rare outside of the Jovians.
and there are sometimes capital punishment, which is, well, in this case, not just killing you, wiping your ego and all backups.
Yeah, that's
It
the
is
thing.
it it's
This
final death.
is, yeah, final death is something they don't particularly like to do. This is for people who genuinely try to end the habitat. Like, it is almost never used. Oh look, the anarchists' piss baby rage about anarcho-capitalists came in a bit here.
Yeah, I mean they kind of have to explain. Well, how does
Well, no, I'm
capitalism
aware.
work?
I'm aware. It's just in my experience they're putting it in quotes because anarchists always reject the concept that anarchy cannot be it has to always be socialist for some reason. It's
Is
mainly
the issue?
because it is tied to the original international,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, most anarchist philosophies do require essentially the demolition of private property.
And so because these anarcho-capitalists are only exist, there's no laws. It's through contracts. You settle it out in private court
The fucking NAP.
with their own interpretations. You do not have a shared legal framework. So I guarantee you, there are people that do court shopping.
Not only court shopping, but unironically, if you began screaming about admiralty law, it's very likely you could probably get walk depending on what habitat you go to.
I was just
Like,
wondering about that.
like
When
legitimately,
they're,
a soft sit probably could actually win a court case in these.
I mean, they might, but then again, they have the money to afford it.
And last but not least, how autonomous legalities work. There's not really laws, so to speak. It's just norms.
So it's social behavior correction.
Yeah, basically, that's how they do things.
They They promote restorative justice. Oh, I believe, yeah, they can exile you from the habitat if you prove to be enough of a nuisance.
Yeah, exile's very common. The concept of theft is unheard of, mainly because why the fuck are you stealing, bro? Just use the goddamn fabricator. Because everyone gets access to it. They don't have police. They again, I mentioned they have a community watch.
And again, since they don't believe in coercion by force, it really is trying to do dispute then punitive measurement.
Everyone has access to surveillance feeds and sensor logs, so abnormal activity is quickly noted. I don't know about that. Like there is a certain class of people that do like to look at stuff like that, like look at security camera footage. But it's kind of a bit weird to expect everyone in the community to actually have the same interests you do or have the same passion for certain aspects of running a system than you. You know?
I mean, I think in that case you would probably have
Don't get me wrong, and
need
like
to do
let's say you
some
have a
of this.
habitat of like 500 people, I'd at least expect, I don't know, like 5 to 7 of them to actually do this.
There probably are people that dedicate their time, but I think the habitat might have a rule of okay, give at least like
Oh no, there no no.
four
Remember,
hours
rules.
a
There's
month.
not rules. There's a social consensus that like let's say they might do something like a community militia recycle cycle or something, where each member of the community has to essentially take their lumps and actively work as community watch. Like
Yes,
civic watch duties.
because again, your rep will be dinged, and well, it's the economy.
Reputation is one of your main economies because, again, what else do you have other than I don't know, ideas?
No, you can't. No, no IP.
I do think it's a little goofy that the response is always geared towards finding out what happened and to help their needs like that. It's a little weird that all autonomous tend to be that.
I mean, I assume
This
there's
is
a
again the writers accidentally kind of trying to make their system the best, in my opinion. Like this is a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. If you're in a community, a small community, that could actually be what the normal response is. But it just kind of becomes a bit of an issue if you keep trying to upsell this concept.
yeah. Um,
I'm gonna be
is
honest, because of what they do, these guys are kind of the least interesting.
yeah.
See, here's the thing: your pet faction usually becomes the least interesting because consumers do notice. Your The player base usually tends to notice what group that the author tends to prefer the most, and that usually becomes kind of obnoxious.
It is, I think, at least an interesting look because I'm pretty sure what they're taking from is something that's been thought up in anarchist circles and tried to be implemented currently. So
Keyword being
for
tried because 9 times out of 10 anarchist communes fucking fall apart.
so I do feel like they probably have to explain a lot because a lot of people are probably not anarchists that are going into this.
And when I say that, it's just in my experience, what happens are those little collectivized they fail because people basically give up, or because they lack the actual knowledge to run a society. You know, again, it works better in this post scarcity future because the bar of running a state like this is so much lower. Because like you don't need to know how to do things because you can just use the fabricator to do most of the basic stuff you need to work,
You could automate the logistics with AI.
which makes actually becoming an anarchist completely trivial. I think my biggest problem is the fact that the that every member in the autonomous tend to be of a similar belief when it comes to how criminal. A better way I would have said is when people do create problems in autonomous space, the response I would say have it be the response depends on which habitat they're in or which
And
community
then,
or which group they're in part of. Some autonomous maybe are harsher than others, while others might actually do reformative, like basic reform stuff with you.
yeah,
Like I would because that's another thing with it's the expression to a degree of the individual, like in anarchism. Yeah, it's socialist, but there's also a bit of individuality into it. At least there's kind of at least in the American strain. I don't know if Europeans still have that element of individuality in there. because there is a bit of a difference in anarchist breeds. I don't know. I just my biggest problem is that they try to upsell it just a little too much.
Yeah, they do.
An example of a community that works in real life are the Shakers. No, the Shakers fucking died out. There's like two left.
I mean, the kibbutz.
That doesn't really work because that's a centralized religious authority. Kibbutz usually.
I know, but it is at least somewhat anarchistic.
Not really. Kind of yeah, kind of not really. Because you have a central authoritative investment in the power technically usually either in the form of
Yeah,
experts that run the kibbut because they know what they're doing when it comes to farming and economy, or in the form of not necessarily rabbis but learned scholars in Talmudic lore.
honestly, though, I could see that existing in this autonomous alliance, a bunch of kibbutzes.
Hey, you want to know an example, a really funny example of utopian socialism eating shit? So, have you ever heard of the community of Oneida?
Isn't that a town?
Yep, it was founded as a utopian socialist experiment. They What happened was they went full corporate and run a knife and fork and spoon silverware manufacturing company now. Look, I'm not saying anarchism can't work. I'm saying that the optimism that they keep bringing up kind of makes this annoying.
It is. But let's move on then to the rest of the law, which issues of property rights, and it seems to be kind of, well, can you stake a claim on it
It's
if you're there?
basically the only property claims is mainly towards habitats and well morphs as well.
And also gate crashing, because if you're on a new planet, who claims the planet?
Well, also who owns the Pandoran Gate?
Yeah, it basically becomes a colony, and if they are, let's say, locked out or cannot communicate, uh, shit goes bad really quick.
Crime is still a thing, obviously.
Uh, oh, violence again, murder, considering it's no longer permanent, it's assault, allowing the creation of murder clubs where people can freely murder each other without repercussion.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in this regard. Property and theft, well, again, theft isn't usually a big deal in this society anymore just because you can fabricate new things,
But rare goods,
which are classified as earth relics, alien artifacts, prototypes, large amounts of raw resources, and morphs.
like
That's
original
where
works of art,
theft becomes an issue. Like
and
if you
then
steal
there's
some dude's bike, that's annoying, but they can just fabricate something. The worst you might get is a very puny fine.
uh, there's also the issue of those visitors that steal the air because they haven't paid for their allotment of life support.
That's another thing. Especially this is mainly because biomorphs are much more expensive.
And then there's also squatters.
Yeah, squatting, if you're wondering, is actually still heavily punished because space is one of the very, very important resources still.
And there's also the issue of squatting in abandoned property because there might have been a reason it's abandoned because, well, there's a Titan war machine in it.
Or alternatively, it was a research center by the Earth government before the fall, and one of the many strains of exsurgent viruses are still native in the systems.
And then IP law.
Hey, maybe,
Uh,
maybe, maybe you're lucky. Like, let's say you're pretty much a biomorph, and the only material on you is your chip, your internal chip memory storage. As
Hmm?
long as you keep that protected, maybe the exurgent virus on that station won't bother you since it only affects machinery. Or maybe it will
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
So maybe you're lucky there. Or maybe you're really unlucky and no, it was a bioweapon that was made by the Titans and you just turn into animate goo.
Uh, and the
Animate
other thing,
self-replicating cancer goo. That's basically the gray goo apocalypse scenario.
flesh,
Yeah, the flesh. You become the many from System Shock 2.
uh, and intellectual property, uh,
This is very
DRM.
important, in particular in the
It's
inner systems.
it still exists
Yep. Intellectual property is treated as a big deal by corporations.
because that's kind of their only asset.
I mean, it's literally what makes or break a company. To give you an idea, corporate espionage legitimately does destroy companies in this setting because it's kind of the only thing they got. Like, if let's say you're the only guy who knows how to make these oxygen scrubbers and you lose the monopoly, your corporation might instantly die because there's other ones that actually can outproduce you very casually.
Then there's online crime,
Yeah,
so
a
hacking,
lot of crime is this.
identity theft, fraud. Um, Vices, though,
Vices are mostly fine. There's a few places where it's an issue.
because what vices? You know,
Yeah,
drugs.
it's really only the Jovian Republic.
Um, Bioconservative factions, for example, ban porn involving uplifts because that's bestiality.
Yeah, there's basically Vice is dead as a system.
So I guess it means there's more new taboos because they do say Canadians ban porn that involves indentured workers because it's an act of coercion.
I mean, technically, there are some drugs that are restricted because of fears it might be, say, a virus. Because there's an entire class of drugs known as narco algorithms, basically programs that are designed to get robots and synthmorphs drunk and high.
I don't know how you do that, but well, you can. Uh, then there's ego trafficking.
Oh, they got rid of Ultimates or Canon 2E because of the writers being idiots. I'm not surprised.
They thought they were fascists, which
I mean, you could argue that to a degree, but honestly, I just see them as neo social
yeah,
Darwinists, which are not necessarily fascist.
I guarantee you they probably took that and it's like, yeah, we don't want you playing as them.
Which combine again, that's another reason why I kind of shit on the autonomists. No offense, but when you're that blatant about your partisan hackery, I just like fuck you, buddy.
Um, with the ego trafficking, because again, you take a mind, fork it, and hey, you've got multiple workers. And you could also merge egos if you are crazy, because you've now merged two minds together.
So yeah, soul ego traffickers. It's pretty much legal in the inner system to a degree. There's a social taboo, and I think you get dinged heavily on rep, but you're not gonna get arrested for it. In the outer system, there's a good shot. There's a good shot that you'll get your body murdered. Pretty good chance. And as for other crimes, there's a variety of them. Black clinics are a thing. There's also some morphs that, again, there are some morphs that are considered a bad idea to install yourself into. Uh, let's Warframe synthroids, synthezoid species. Those are usually banned or limited. There's also, again, the Bioroid super soldier templates. Those are also usually pretty restricted. That's what these guys are for.
And they make a point of red markets, which are the black markets of anarchist space.
which I think is kind
Because
of dumb. No, just
uh,
renaming the market to be red, okay.
well, 'cause a black market is something that's illegal, but if you have no laws, you can't have anything that's illegal.
I just think it's kind of dumb that they named it something else.
Eh,
Kind of
I
dumb.
guarantee. But I guess to distinguish it,
I don't think it's that. I think it's because black is traditionally seen as an element of anarchy.
so is red. It's
Yeah,
our
I don't get it.
anarcho-communism, but
I don't get it.
next up, then detailing into the factions.
So yeah, I'm just looking. Red markets are
It's an actual thing.
no. I'm just like I don't know. It seems kind of weird that they named it that when black market still applies. I think it's one of those what's that neo language expressions where you just kind of try to change stuff up just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
So Lunar Lagrange Alliance. Their memes or beliefs are bio-chauvinism, which is a preference of flesh over metal. Capitalist, because it is at the end of the day still using the traditional market in a way, and reclaiming Earth itself.
Um,
It is mainly on the moon, although there are space stations that orbit the Earth on some of the Lagrange points that have been cleaned up, and they owned that.
uh, Government is a council of representatives from each city and habitat. Voting power is proportional to the hab's population.
The Great
So it,
Off-World Alliance plods on like a Teflon Balich to Theorem. Okay. I just had to point out their choice of using that word.
what does that mean?
That's the thing. I don't really know.
It seems to be a chemical.
Well, Teflon is, but I don't know what Deuterium is.
Uh, it is a genus of a very large mammal related to the rhinoceros. So it's essentially saying it's a old skeleton.
Okay. Not the best analogy, I'd say.
Yeah.
Just it feels like they found a word and just wanted to use it. They go into details about how it's run. The council seats a representative from each member city and habitat. It's proportional. They also have Banks, Burberry, and Bollywood because a lot of this is run by a lot of the culture is based on the subcontinent of India, at least partially.
Yeah. Or at least seems to be a mix. Like the fashion appears to be coming from India, but when it comes to banking, comes from the Swiss. It does say with
There's a sort of kind of as I'm reading how they write this, there's a sort of it's like a small needle in the brain.
yeah, there's a bit
There,
of a
there's a bit of a cuntishness in
dislike.
the writing. I think that's the best way to describe it. There's a bit of a smugness to it. It actually kind of reminds me of the same energy of some of the really bad political powered by the apocalypse games that we read. Like it has some
Um,
of that same energy.
oh, it does seem to be much more of a very elite kind of. It's because I don't know if you could say like they were able to get off Earth first, or they were already established there.
Well, it's because the Lunar Lagrange Alliance are comprised of some of the oldest of the systems that are still around. Like Luna was pretty early settled by humanity before the fall, and it wasn't completely scrubbed like Earth was.
So
Because of
they have
that,
an arrogance to them.
well, you say that, but I'll be the judge when we cover some of the other factions. Yeah, the bias is starting to show itself more, which is very unfortunate.
So they do have a portion of the population that want to reclaim the planet,
Well, yeah,
Earth.
a big thing of the Lagrange alliance is it sees itself as the successor to Earth because, well, it's kind of where, out of all of the political systems, it's besides the Jovians, probably one of the few areas where old governance was still around.
It's also is literally it's the closest to the planet.
It also, on top of that, is one of the few systems in the inner system that isn't a corporate nightmare. I mean, not completely, I should say. There's still a strong element of corporatism, but it's not as bad.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
Morningstar, it's a techno progressive Venus independence.
yeah. So it got independence 5 years ago from the Planetary Consortium,
And
and
it's described as pretty much luck that they weren't destroyed. Oh, they are the remnants of
the
the old Earth governments? I was right.
a bit. Uh, the politics right now is the concern of terraforming, um, specifically how to do it, because some want to preserve the planet's surface conditions without raising or while raising oxygen levels, um, uh, and I guess others are maybe saying just keep it as is. Or no, those are like the semi-terraforming. The full terraforming is trying to create orbital mirrors that would cool the planet's surface. Um, so that there is a uh, divide. Um,
I think it's a little silly that I think it's kind of silly that they're trying to say that there's like a war on how to terraform Venus.
I mean,
It's a little goofy, especially since space is such a premium for trans humanity. So,
I mean, it's politics. People will fight tooth and nail over the dumbest thing.
oh, like transubstantiation in wine.
Yeah,
I'm not even kidding. Millions fucking died because of that.
I mean, in this case, it's probably because people have invested in specific ways for terraforming, so they don't want to see their efforts go to waste.
It was never about terraforming. Most of the oligarchs running Mars were originally either American or Chinese. Their opposite numbers in Venus were either born off-world or came from Europe or Brazil.
Uh,
Okay.
though the other good news is, baseball still exists. The Cubs, Hashin, and Tigers. So at least American baseball still around, I think. Um, the politics of the of Venus is the Star Council.
And again, their political hackery is kind of exposed a little bit.
I mean,
No,
it's
because this is written in much more shining terms than the Lagrange Alliance. Like if you read it, it's
yeah.
I kind of hate that. I legitimately fucking hate that.
It seems to be that they want the authors probably prefer more direct democracy than representative. So
The authors are a bunch of hacks.
the current prime minister is an Italian-born porn star, athlete, and psychosurgeon.
Okay.
Um, Venus habitats have a basic income and nanofab allotment, full citizenship to AGIs and uplifts. Uh,
I'm also not also for just for some reason like here's the thing. When we read the previous sections, is this supposed to be from a oh it is from the point of view of a person. I'm not a
yeah,
big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of that because this reads very strongly as author's fucking mouthpiece.
I think it would be a bit better if they had the thing from World of Darkness where they then
Oh, yeah, where they do it clinical at first and then the point of view from within and without. That would actually have been great. That would have been great if they decided not to be partisan hacks.
yeah, um, they
Who tries to
Say,
found
there's
a
one.
major political bloc with virtually no military. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh, this is actually even stupider than I thought. This is even dumber than I thought. So the independence movement succeeded
They have
mainly because the consortium decided not to play dirty. Okay.
they have mercenaries now, so they are very Italian. If that's the case, they don't have a
No,
standing
because
army. They have mercenaries.
no, the Italians had standing armies too. Oh my god. Oh boy.
Um,
Oh boy. Here we go with the corporations. I can't wait to listen to these anarchists screech about how bad capitalism is while they still huff copium about their own system not having its own goddamn flaws.
uh,
I,
yeah, they do.
I'm not I
They,
am not a fan of this segment. It's important
yeah,
to look at, but
the
ooh.
yeah they when they start off saying it, the consortium was formed through networking, propaganda, and coercion by its founding Hypercorps. Uh, Half of transhumanity lives under its oversight. Their plan is establish a new homeworld on Mars. Um, uh, let's see. Um, Promote technological development, but in their perspective, safeguard transhumanity. Uh, to They say
Hey,
this as a
Squirrel
reason to
Killer, and yes, I
yeah,
completely agree. What they should have done if they're going to do this is they should have written from the point of view of a supporter for each of these. And then what you do is the white wolf from within and from without, like how the others see each other. Like, for example, the Lunar Lagrange Alliance might say to about the Morningstar constellation, it's very lucky those corporate bastards didn't just decide to use security to crack their skulls in, the idiotic dreamers. Meanwhile, you have the Morningstar constellation saying, yeah, the Lagrange system's like my dad, old and useless.
um,
Unless you absolutely intended to be purely antagonistic. Here's the problem. I know for a fact that when we get to the autonomous, they're probably going to be written relatively cleanly, and that's going to suck. Now,
yeah,
if they don't, if they shit on all of it, I'll actually be impressed.
the hyper the planetary consortium. Basically, just the whole thing is
It's a
uh,
collective of evil
yeah,
corporations that gather together to decide on how things should be run. And it's
they
focused on
do ha-
economy.
they do, however, have a corporate intel agency called Oversight, which is independent of the Hypercorp Council that is able to scan for abnormal or anomalies in hypercorps, um, being fiscal malfeasance, collective action by workers, resistance from a potential market. So
I
they're
just
kind of
realized Jim just insulted the Tigers. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm surprised the Tigers survived the fall too, but I guess the Titans couldn't destroy Detroit any harder than Detroit could destroy Detroit. So that's
they
why the Tigers are still around.
they do have essentially a legal body that is to enforce profit and healthy competition at all costs.
Everyone welcome our corporate masters. The company's family and the benefits are great. Yeah, yeah. The big problem that we're gonna have is that when we get to the autonomous, this is gonna be a shit. That's gonna be a shit show.
There's also
Project Ozma.
step which is essentially consortium's firewall. We really don't know what they do.
It's suspected that it's to look out for Titans and probably to work with the factors.
I would put it as like the close might be either like the Inquisition from 40K or Section 31 from Star Trek.
I would actually have gone with the Men in Black.
Yeah,
The Men in
actually,
Black, if run as a business, with shades of Section 31.
then next is the Tharcine League, which is just Martian nationalism,
It,
Martian
it's a
independence.
puppet too.
Yeah. Um, to control and manage the terraforming of Mars.
In a medically induced coma, stuffed and mounted for a late stage of capitalism. Oh, go fuck yourself, you pretentious, optimistic, delusional cunts who couldn't run a commune. I am a. I know for a fact if they went to a commune, they'd fucking quit because they'd be annoyed with the aspect of actually running the fucking thing.
Um,
In
they
my
do make
experience, most anarchists, when they try it, they go, "Wow, this is hard," and fucking give up. I'm
um,
getting pissy because this is like painful.
though again, it is say a point here. Every single one of them, even the corporate polities, are we ain't touching Titan tech.
Well, yeah,
That's
that's
a
insane.
universal taboo.
The only ones who are willing to touch that are crazies out in the Kuiper Belt, and I don't mean the Ultimates. Even they're fucking reluctant to touch that shit. From what I remember, even they're kind of reluctant.
I guess moving on to the outer system.
Bureaucratic hell zone, terraforming, blah blah blah. Military and security, they apparently do have a small security thing that's augmented. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, it's now explaining anarchism,
Eat shit and die.
explaining its benefit.
Eat shit and
Um,
die.
yeah, what I
It
think
is
the
from
rest,
their point of view. Fuck you.
yeah,
Fuck you. Fuck you.
um,
Oh, you partisan fucking hacks.
what we face. Say, anarchy is an easy, informal hierarchies grow all the time, even in communities that take precaution against it. Something as an in um, conscious as favoring one style of art over another, or as destructive as ceding control of the station to an
Yup.
emergency council.
Yup.
Our gift economy attracts its fair share of moochies too, and they sometimes aren't discovered before doing some real damage to the community. Also face military invasions.
You're blaming the failure of your communes on mooches, and not the fact that when you go out there you realize, huh, it's actually a bitch to run a fucking power infrastructure. God damn.
Um,
Look,
and the
I wouldn't be
and,
so angry if they actually were more even-handed with how they did this shit.
yeah,
That's my
yeah.
biggest problem with this section. That's why I'm pissed.
Um,
Also, I'll be honest, when they went masks off, you notice how they started swearing like a longshoreman like I do? Look,
yeah.
I drop curse words because I have a lack of filter. They do it because it looks edgy. Also, yeah, it's edgy. Like whatever. Like holy shit. Holy shit. Uh,
The
there's a this
autonomous.
important distinction between anarchism and anarchy. The former is lack of hierarchy, while the latter is chaos. They are not interested. They're literally trying to explain. No, like we're not complete. No laws, cooperation, not competition. Yep, is the crux of survival. And usually, what happens is that type of life is fucking tough. Oh boy, I think they're actually going to go the full route of all anarchism is socialist, and those who don't agree with that are wrong. Oh,
Oh,
this is gross.
yeah,
This is like eating
probably
fucking toothpaste after chugging orange
because
juice.
here's what they list as anarchist principled society or societies that had anarchist principles: the Iroquois Confederacy, uh, Spain, Ukraine.
The Iroquois Confederacy was not fucking anarchist. Eat shit and die.
They say it
They
has
had a senate.
principles.
They had a
They
senate.
had
They had chiefs. They had a structured society. They had a structured society that was not based on your socialist bullshit. They were not inspired Bakunin. Eat shit and die. Nestor Mancno was a goddamn bandit. Eat shit and die. Spain? Sure, I'll grant you that, but that's because it's by comparison to the fucking Latifunda system they had in goddamn Catalonia. Chiapas? Ah, yes, the poorest region in fucking Mexico, where the campesinos had to work in communes or starve. And Rojava, and oh yes, the unrecognized Kurdistani state. Fuck you. Eat shit. You delusional, cope sucking fucks.
Oh
Again,
boy, what
I
I'd
wouldn't
like to.
I wouldn't actually be so fucking violent about this. I would have been like, okay, let's go into the autonomists. If it wasn't for the fact that every other point of view was, oh, they're flawed, or oh, these guys kind of agree with us, so therefore they're less flawed. You fucking delusional idiots.
I would
And
love
I
to
even
play this
mentioned
game
up
where I get
front,
to blow up
the
these guys.
hardest. Here's the thing. I understand, like in a post scarcity society, anarchism is a lot easier because a lot of the bars, because running such a society is a pain in the ass. Because without structured systems that you have to build yourself via community watch, you have to wear many hats. Like, how are you going to fix the roads? You have to collectively go out and break your backs to fucking do that. Same with telephone lines, same with home repair, same with serving in the fucking military. That's one of the drawbacks of of a communal society. Everyone shares the pain in a different way, which which also kind of runs rampant against some people have different interests and talents. You still have to do it. There's a reason why a lot of communes fail. In a post-scarcity society, resources aren't a big deal, so you only have to do a very few important things, which is similar to your civic rights of voting. Which, again, to show an example of why anarchism doesn't work, unless you're forced to vote. Notice that only like half the people actually bothered to show up to do it. Just pointing that out. Anyway, I wouldn't have a problem with it if they weren't being partisan hacks. Yes, I get it. You're anarchists. I understand that. But here's the thing. You're writing an RPG book. Yes, it can be for yourself, but and I know you don't give a shit. I know you don't. That's fine. But you're crippling yourself as a writer if you decide to not be nuanced. No, I'm good. I'm good, Squirrel Killer. I just this entire segment does genuinely sour my opinion on the book noticeably. Not completely. There's enough here that it's really interesting, but I am now dealing with my least favorite faction in here by far. Ah, yes, spreading the revolution. Oh, you had to drag out Barsoom for this. Yes,
Where's
yes.
it mentioning Partsum?
Try to link Barsoom, the warlike stratocratic death planet, to your concept.
I think
Oh, if the
that's
bias
what.
was inverted, it'd be just as bad. I'd agree. Like
Yeah.
straight up, if this was from the point of view like the guy was a big
Heck,
fan of the Jovians or the Ultimates and was like shitting on the anarchists, I would have just as much to complain about. I would like genuinely. You're gonna be dumb enough to say that your weird Cristo junta nonsense, your fucking Portuguese bootleg. You know, the one that actually crippled the African colonies they owned to the point where Angola and Mozambique were some of the poorest regions in Africa because of your goddamn gigabrain concept, Salazar. Excellent decision there, buddy. Yeah, yeah, I'd shit on it just as hard. I'd shit on it just as hard because this is hack writing.
basically, when it comes to politics, write like it's Fallout New Vegas.
Right, like it's Fallout New Vegas, and admittedly, New Vegas kind of dropped the ball a bit with Kaiser's Legion, but they kind of released it on a crunch. So what was it? 2/3 of Legion stuff was cut, or at least a third was.
Yeah,
So that's why they're not as nuanced as they're supposed to be.
but
And even
I
then, they at
mean,
least gave it an effort because they point out, yeah, Kaiser's Legion is a shit show. Like it's a complete shit show. It's awful, brutal. It's a cratocracy survival of the fittest to a degree, but it also introduced things like laws, a stable system of an economy, actual
there's
protection,
there's
and
also
it actually revitalized trade
the fact that it's entirely by design that it was to
because it
be
was the
brutal.
point of view of a weirdo.
But
And
moving,
here we are, partisan hacks who wrote this book. To hear
but
the consortium talk, to hear the big businesses talk, because fuck you, big business. We're proof that their way of life is fading. Anarchism is going to dominate.
Well, I could say this: if if humanity is completely isolated, there's no way the Titans can kill everyone.
No, no, no. I'm just laughing because this is another example. Unironically, unironically, they've kind of again decided to say, hey, "Fuck you, Hegel, you're wrong. Fuck you,
Uh,
Hegelian dialectics. There is a thing called the end of history, and we're a part of." You fucking. Oh wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
okay, moving on. The Autonomous Alliance.
Yeah, straight up. This is just more anarchism, the best. So let's look
Well,
up
the
it.
Autonomous Alliance is literally the alliance of anarchists, extropians, scum, titanians. It's every single one of them. So it is all forms of anarchism working together.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to shit on the extropians.
Uh,
Anarchists fucking despise ANCAPs and monarchists.
do we want to move on to that, or
I mean, let's see. Do they have any details about that? We demand autonomy, self-organization, and self-government for all sapient beings. We support democracy and all forms of organization where sapiens collectively design their mutual aid and reciprocating altruism between sapiens. Meanwhile, you tell everyone else, besides the people who agree with you, to fucking die. So, I don't know about that, Chief. I don't know. I think you're full of shit, buddy.
no?
Anyway, let's look
Uh,
at the ANCAPs and how they're shit.
extropians are the only ones who truly embrace the free market. Uh, this seems to be from the perspective of someone from there. And the lovey-dovey collectivist bullshit going on across the anarchist habs seem nice in principle, but in reality it's hot garbage. The lack of laws is good, but do you really want to share all your stuff with strangers, rely on your neighbors for backups, and sacrifice yourself to the collective? We're the happy medium
I'm
between the
actually
two.
more pissed off because this means they could be nuanced because I know they're not of the mind to agree with this. At least not fully. This actually makes me a little more mad
The unifying
because
principle of all
this is like pathetic. Tyranny is the only peace. Surrender freedom. Surrender identity. Become one.
there are habitats that are yeah that they're
Yeah,
kind
there
of
are
all of one
habitats like
mind.
that squirrel killer. An anarchist forming government. No, here's the thing. An anarchist government genuinely could kind of work in a way. Could kind of like it works best on local points of view, and you can kind of do weird little confederations out of that. It's a pain in the ass the larger the system gets. That's the biggest problem with anarchy. It becomes kind of a nightmare to try to organize as you get larger. But again, if you're like trying to run a town or like a little city, you could probably get away with it being run by anarchists and it actually not being a complete dumpster fire. Might actually kind of work, you know? I don't completely poo-poo anarchists. I just hate the fact that they're optimistic and I really hate when they write it from the point of view that only their ideology works. It comes off as
Uh,
preachy and makes me disagree with you on every level humanly possible because it is a sort of delirious cope, if you get what I mean.
Uh, I do like this line with the extropians. Most extropians identify as individualists and anarcho-capitalists, a term which always triggers those collectivist anarchists who consider capitalism and anarchism to be incompatible. Sorry, not sorry.
That's cute, but here's my biggest again. Where was this when we covered the inner systems?
Well, the only thing I could say is because it was written by Firewall, and Firewall's primarily anarchist.
Fuck off.
But yeah, they should have done inner system stuff.
If they did the inner system like this, that would be actually perfectly fine. Wait, how?
Um,
And too long didn't read terms. Wait, how? What? You have to explain that, Jim. But market are anarchists, aka ANCAPs.
um, they serve as the bridge between the inner and outer system, probably because they kind of speak both languages in a way.
Well, yeah, because they understand the concept of business.
Oh, actually, interesting. The contracts are maintained by decentralized holochain cryptographic ledgers.
They use Bitcoin.
Yes, they legitimately use. Well, no, they use NFTs.
I mean, the thing is, people think the NFTs are actually the JPEGs. It's not. It's the string of code attached to it. The people who try to defend NFTs don't really realize that the picture means fucking nothing.
It's the code.
Like, yeah, it's the code. They could still copy your crappy ape picture or your crappy weird
Yeah.
pixelized nightmare thing.
Which again, I can honestly see that being used in the future because that
Uh,
contract is then kind of permanent. You know what it is. Everyone knows what it's supposed to be. And
uh yeah, I mean, kind of. I mean, as long as you keep your internet infrastructure working. If they're all written in point of view from someone within the factions, it would have been fun. Exactly, exactly. That's why I'm a little bit mad. That's why I'm a little bit angrier because with the Extropians, which I know most of the writers probably would disagree with them to some degree, they actually try to write from the point of view.
yeah,
Anarchy
I
gives do not compute for me for they're not if they're not fused to another system. Well, the thing is, anarchy
it,
traditionally is fused to a variation of socialism just because its key founders initially were part of the First Internationale, the most notorious of which was Mikhail Bakunin. But there are others, and there's a variety of strings. There's anarcho-communism commonly brought up, and Prim, which is hilarious. One people often sleep on is actually anarcho-syndicalism, which is basically workplace democracy, but direct democracy in communes.
if you've ever played Kaiserreich, you know what he's talking about.
Yeah, Kaiserreich has the syndicalists kind of succeed, which is interesting.
Um,
But I mean, out of the lot, syndicalism actually, in a way, kind of out of all of the, it's not out of all the socialist ideologies, but it's one of the ones that can actually work a little better, and it actually complements anarchism fairly well.
um, with the anarcho-capitalists say, meanwhile, the autonomous criticize us for allowing contracts that are exploitive. But if an adult wanted to sign an agreement to become an indenture, I don't see why I should stop them. Also criticize us for the lack of social safety net for society's downtrodden. Just we are,
A little. There we
yeah,
go. There's a little bit of that hackery. It's just they agree.
yeah.
They agree. Fuck the man. So that's what.
Though I do
Mmm.
like this.
A little
If you ask me if
gross.
we're pissing off both sides, we're probably doing it right.
I like that. My problem is they could have done that with the inner sphere too, and I would have been pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Next up is the Jovian Republic, and I do like this section. So, Jovian Republic arose from the ashes of the 17-minute war, where the U.S. military and South Americans destroyed the Chinese and Russians.
And took control over the whole thing. Yep.
Oh, also, their memes are bioconservatism, Catholicism, and security. So, uh, the um, military junta established the framework for the new republic. The lip service is paid to democratic ideals. Everyone knows the Security Council wields true power. Um, what drives the republic? I like this part. I wish I could condemn the actions of the Security Council as fascism, but the truth is far murkier. Every Jovian citizen looks back at the fall with two words on our lips: never again. Whatever it takes for humanity to survive, we will do.
Okay,
If we
here's my
must be the ones
question.
to make,
Why the fuck is it just fuck the inner sphere? Why are the Jovians written like this when
like,
like they
probably a little
that's
bit of
weird.
fuck the inner sphere, because I'm assuming they can't really figure out how do we write somebody who is sympathetic to capitalism, uh, that isn't just a corporate stooge.
What the fuck is wrong with them?
I could also see this. I think a lot of people were interested with the first version of the Jovian Republic, so they went into detail on them.
That just
Because
annoys me a little bit more, to be honest.
they kind of are the most one of the most interesting.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
because they're so different compared to everyone else. Yeah, anarchism tends to be very socialistic. There's a few strains of it that aren't really anymore because they kind of went into the weeds. ANCAPs is one. National anarchism is another good example of that. And yes, there is a legitimately national anarchism is a genuine thing. It is really fucking weird.
I've
Um,
heard anarcho-fascism exists.
yeah,
I don't
that's
know how
that's
that's
that's what
possible.
national anarchism works, and the way it works is imagine communities run by ethnicity. That is how the ANFAST do.
Um,
That is how anarcho-fascism works. Is literally it is guided by nationality. Like there is no state. There is merely there is merely the nation. There is merely the culture that is unified together via the communities. Very ethnically divided too, if you're wondering. It is very cursed and very weird.
yeah, I don't know how that doesn't. So it's just what mutual separatism.
Sort of. It's weird as shit. Oh yeah, the Jovians were written way worse in first edition, and people complained about that. I'm actually
Um,
surprised the writers, acceded because they told everyone else "fuck you" for every other system. It's a little weird. It's a little weird they were actually backbent to the Jovians.
they do say religion is plays a major role in all their lives, and the Catholic Church found refuge here. Um,
Yep. If you're wondering, the papacy moved here.
yeah. So we have Space Pope now.
Yep. And the big thing is they have the strongest military by far, and the
Uh,
Jovians as a whole, basically, they saw what the fuck happened on Earth in the fall, and they're seeing transhumanity, and they basically go, yeah, these guys are asking for Titan 2 electric boogaloo. We'll
and
survive it
base
while they won't.
and they basically have a uh, Council on Bioethics and Advanced Technology, which mandates the use of technology. I do
Oh
like
yeah,
the
they have a
underlying.
shitload of limitations, which, by the way, cripples their economic output somewhat, pretty
I like
badly
the slang.
actually.
You know, I joined Firewall after watching the child of one of my parishioners pass away from a disease that could have been cured by technology deemed unethical by Seabeat. I held the boy's cooling corpse in my arms and promised his parents two words: never again. That's a
A little bit of the
very good
hackery.
write-up.
A little. It's a good write up, but it's still a little hacky after the previous two. Let's be fair.
They also the Republic taxes anyone trying to get into the outer system as they use the eco casting.
There's the scum, which are basically these are the hedonists.
Yep. Um, to
They
turn
will
out,
not. They are not wages. They will not live in KG. They exist only to cum.
oh yeah, they're one of the swarms is the Carnival of the Goat. It's infamous for its sexual expression, lasciviousness, body switching, and unique morph designs. It is D. It is the D board.
Yeah, if you're wondering, the scum swarms, they are nomad. They are coomer drug-addled nomads, which are pretty neat.
Um,
No, I
yeah,
actually I
yeah.
find these guys kind of interesting-ish because they're just kind of
There's
they're
another one.
it's just a
Sorry.
weird nomad fleet.
Each ship in There's No Going Back is devoted to reenacting a different historical theme with a technological twist. Shogunate Japan, American Wild West.
No, that's cool. Like
Yeah,
the
that.
swarm's cool. Let's be fair.
Yeah. Uh, then there is the Titanian Commonwealth, cyber democracy and techno socialism.
Well, no, before one last thing about the swarms are yeah, they're really cool. They're basically floating space Las Vegases that move around, and there's a variety of different ones for different things. Like get your ass to Mars is a tourist thing. Like me, I'm delicious. These guys run a lot of tourism, but they also run the black market, and especially in ego trafficking and and indent harvesting. So they are facilitators of human trafficking. And now we can go into the Titanium Commonwealth, which is also a techno-socialist state.
Uh, 60 million transhumans live there. Settled originally by the Scandinavian colonists.
Okay, that makes a lot of
Or
sense
no,
then.
yeah, yeah.
No, that actually makes a
Um,
lot of sense. It's basically Nordic socialism.
oh no, yeah, their currency is the kroner.
Yep, Nordic socialists. Okay,
Like
that makes
yeah,
a lot of sense.
direct democracy, a voting bloc called the plurality. Everyone votes using their muse. Initiatives are decided quickly. I guess an example of it, they brought up in the daily life of the inner sphere of somebody having a vote upcoming, and they just have their muse just cast it based on their previous votes. So
Muse. Where is the Muse?
it's your personal AI assistant.
No, I'm just trying to find where they talk about that. Oh, no.
Where? You mean in the daily life thing, or
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it.
it's with the daily life of inner sphere, outer sphere thing?
Oh, the one where they fuck it up. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, actually, that's a clever way to get direct democracy to work. Basically, you make an AI template of your inclinations, like yeah, and you just back it up or improve it every now and again.
You don't really even need to know what you're voting for. It's
Because
just,
your
well,
muse is going to be pretty accurate to what you believe in. That's a
um,
clever way of doing direct democracy. I actually like that.
they
Hey,
have
look! Hey,
micro.
look! I like a thing because they're not being absolute partisan hacks.
So the Commonwealth has microcorps on instead of hypercorps, which we don't really define.
Oh yeah, the Nordic countries aren't purely socialist. They actually use what's called mixed economies. So one of the things that one of the big things is realizing that there are serious benefits to capitalism when it comes to a working economy, to like a fluid, large, and dynamic market. So what you do, and this actually is a great example of this is actually during Deng's period in running China, is you take the socialist aspect of essentially trying to elevate everyone towards a certain living standard, a certain class uprising in terms of making things better. And then you splice it in with the market, with the free capitalistic market, and essentially try to balance between making money and making sure your people are doing well. Your welfare is doing great. That's what these guys do.
Um, Commonwealth prides itself on permissible social policies, as uplifts and AGIs have full rights.
They
Forking
also
is
have a
permitted.
surprisingly powerful military because they mobilize a lot of people, which is actually similar to the old Swedish military system, where everyone technically could possibly be conscripted.
I think
They
I
had
don't
a
know if these
pretty
guys are
advanced conscription system, which is why they were able to punch above their weight compared to everyone.
um, moving on or onto the social movements,
Yep, there's the
uh,
Argonauts.
which are scientists. Some of the
I came
research
back and the conversation's still the same. Yeah, we're talking about Eclipse Phase. It happens.
um, some of the research projects they're doing is what is it? Um, Miniaturize and improve antimatter drives. Uh, there was
They actually are trying to build an open source tool for teaching muses.
uh, to clone factors, although that was crushed. Um,
They also designed a free market habitat construction kit called HabOps, which by the way is getting them in a shitload of trouble with the hypercorporations since while it's currently not great, it gives people independence from the corporation dominance, the monopoly they have on building new living space.
um, yeah, and
So the whole thing
basically,
about the Argonauts, actually, they're very similar to what was it, the Followers of the Apocalypse in Fallout, where they're a science cult that tries to help
you're
people.
right. Yeah.
They probably were inspired by this. The writers were probably inspired by them, but I kind of like that stance. Hey, look, guess what? Once we're out, once they try to actually not be partisan, guess what? It balances out. I just wish they did the same to the inner systems.
Yeah. Uh, next up,
I do have an issue with that. I do have a
yeah,
pretty a big issue with how they handled that just because of that.
next up is the Barsoomians, which are just the name for the
Those are
Martian
the
independence movement.
Tharsans that realized that the Tharsans are basically a puppet of the corporations, and are like, no, I'm not a wagey. I will not get in cagey.
Which again, I do find it interesting that they basically say, yeah, we're going to name ourselves after a fictional name of the planet, not
which is
Martian.
which is funny as
Barsoomian.
shit. Yeah, it's from the Princess of Mars books from Edgar Rice Burroughs, the man who wrote Tarzan. One of the first sci-fi adventures that was ever written. Also, an
Yep.
early progenitor of the sword and sorceries. If you're a fan of Conan the Barbarian, it's very likely Ron Howard was inspired by Burroughs' take on Mars, because it is the
I,
story of a man with a sword who fucking conquers his way across the goddamn planet until he becomes its warlord.
wearing nothing but a loincloth and a sword and a laser pistol.
Yeah, I mean, he also used rifles and other things because he was an old Virginian gentleman soldier.
He was a Confederate veteran, which,
Yep.
considering the time period where there was a lot of romance to antebellum South, yeah, makes sense.
It's an interesting, yeah. So these guys want to free Mars, and the thing is, they don't really have an organized ideology. Their big thing is independence first, and then figure out how to run the state later, which I'm okay with. You can actually come up with a variety of streams of thoughts from it, ranging from your anarchist point of views, where you run it via communes, to to more capitalistic kind of means. Their big
Um,
thing is
the
though that they're anti-hypercorporation, so they're more likely to probably agree with the autonomists because of that.
Next up are the bioconservatives, which again are opposed to
These are the
uh,
people who hate uplifting. They also tend to prefer people remaining in their flesh skin.
the the issue though is most of these guys died in the fall because they
They were
can't
on
escape the
Earth.
planet. Yeah. Um, but obviously there's probably a bit of a comeback because they basically say we were right. We were right.
Why does everyone repeat the free Mars idea? It's the one trope that's well overplayed. Because Mars is the red planet, and red equal revolution, and people is dumb.
I think also because you can. It's a colony.
Yeah,
It would be
yeah,
a colony
traditionally
world,
Mars is
and
a
I'm
colony, so that's why. A fun one could have been instead of having the Morning Star be independent, they're actually a rebel group fighting against the corporation. Like they're a rebel Venusian group.
hmm,
Then you can have the Sky Pirates of Venus,
ooh, that's fun.
which
Then
hilariously, that's another Edgar Rice Burroughs book, The Pirates of Venus.
then the more extreme version of bioconservatives, neo-primitives,
Which, by the
return to
way, far right and far left. So they
return to
advocate for horseshoe.
hunter-gatherer,
I'm actually surprised they advocate for. They actually are advocating horseshoe theory. Most anarchists
which
that I've known get pissy about that.
which I have to say, how do these people exist in you're most likely on a habitat. How can you get back to a hunter-gatherer society and you're not on Earth?
You basically run it like Moon from Double Zeta Gundam.
Then there's the Brinkers, which are isolationists. They are they're the
They're the
people
ones
that are
that live in the Kuiper Belt, and they're kind of insane.
no, they're not just that. Trojan asteroid groupings, moons of gas giants, Saturn's rings, Mars and Venus as well, and the sun's corona. It's just anywhere that they can basically say fuck off.
Hmm.
Um, oh, interesting. A lot of these are experimenters. So they'll have one where you can be in 17th century Scotland or Star Trek. Ponos. It is yes, you can roleplay Star Trek.
I'm actually surprised they were able to get away with naming the Klingon homeworld.
Um,
Mars being
Re-
independent and the antagonist bad guy at one point in UC Gundam. You're partially right, Jim. So what happened was Mars was there were efforts originally to possibly colonize Mars, but they were put on hold because of the 1 year war. Xeon remnants actually fled to a variety of places further out in the solar system, and one of which was Mars. Those guys essentially became crazy revanchist, revenge-obsessed terrorists like Omsk in the New Order. They basically wanted to great trial the Earth. So what they did was they tried to weaponize Olympus Mons into a giant fuck-off cannon that were funded by essentially North Korea, because the in the setting Jupiter is their equivalent to North Korea.
and this is all in a mech show.
Yeah. Uh,
That's
the Mars Xeon remnants actually were colloquially known as the Oldsmobile Army because they kept using mechs from the 1 year war. They just upgraded them when they could. So a lot of them were essentially cobbled together, but made out of more advanced technology.
so. Uh, the some of the other groups in Bringer habitats, scientists, um, including, this is where the perfectly ordered society, they psychosurgery everyone so that they're sculpted for their role.
I'm also envisioning, unironically, you could just, as a shitpost, put a small habitat of like a small village that's essentially 1984.
Oh no, I was thinking Alpha Complex,
Alpha Complex could also be fun.
or what's the one from Brave New World?
I don't remember.
Um, the
I
other
don't
thing that
remember. I just know that's where the drug Soma comes from.
religion, cult worship. So this is where your space Amish. I think Orthodox Jews and other groups that are just like
I mean, to give
whatever.
you an idea, one of the crazier wars is between the Sikh community and Canadian survivalists around the Neptunian asteroid field.
Honestly, my side, I'm on the side of the Canadians.
Yeah, and Jupiter was the
Ye-
main enemy for a while. If you're wondering why Jupiter became North Korea, it was out in the sticks, it was out in the sticks essentially when the 1 year war happened. That happened and supplies got badly cut to the planet, which if you're wondering, they were building small colonies to essentially harvest the hydrogen from there to process for fuel. It's one of the only ways they were able to survive because they did not have the habitat modules installed fully. They thus were critically low on things like food and water, to the point where Jupiterians stank because you literally couldn't waste water on showers. Showers were saved for very rare occasions just because it was such a waste of water. That's that's how that's how crippling supplies were. They had to actually plot out societal growth to avoid to avoid a population collapse. They kind of despised the Earth, especially since it kept getting into civil wars, which meant that they couldn't get supplies from there until eventually a crazy space dictator took it over.
n- Next group are ex-humans, which are, I think the correct word would be post-human. They
Legitimately, they reject humanity, embrace whatever,
embrace uh,
anything,
Cthulhu. Like, these are the kinds of people that will turn themselves into the alien,
or into
like
murder
the
machines.
perfect killing machine.
There's even a few
Uh,
that are crazy enough to be like, I will join Titan and become
yeah.
one of them.
Um, handle extreme environments, turn their intelligences to godlike levels.
Soul
Uh,
Eaters, which literally try to fuse themselves into a hive mind.
and singularity seekers, which these people are legitimate threats.
So the Mercurials, they're non-human portions of transhumanity.
Oh, they bring up though ex-humans of note. Um, a abandoned weakness, a pre-fall warlord and predator wanted for war crimes, terrorist attacks, and dealing in WMDs and Titan technology. Uh, by selling
They literally hunt and eat
bioengineered
normal people. They also just randomly go around murdering people, yeah.
because, well, they're they've made themselves superior.
There, yep, Dr. Yu Ping Dalton, exiled after authorities connected her to a plague outbreak on Luna. Literally mad scientist.
Well, there's apes, ex-hominids. They want to establish the apex hominid
They
empire.
want to recreate Planet of the Apes, which is really cute.
Um,
Chelikov, which, yeah, essentially trying to splice transhumans with Titan technology. One
one
Step
step.
Beyond, which is still an antimatter reaction, and then Silent Mercy, which are a crazy hive mind cult.
Uh,
That's literally one guy.
so yeah, the Mercurials
Neo-primitivists who
are.
agree to shut the fuck up and hang out in a set of hab biodomes when someone else maintains as long as they agree to not start shit and self-isolate. Yeah, that could be a way to have a neo-primitivist.
Uh, Interesting. There's a faction of Mercurials that are anti anthropocene or anthropocentrism. They seek to
Basically,
replace,
reject humanity, return to monkey.
which, well, yeah, because they're uplifted. They don't have a culture. Everything would have been crafted to be of human design. So
So yeah, the thing
yeah,
about
how do they?
Mercurials are they're uplifts that and non-humans that are radicalized because in most even in like the outer sphere they're not treated equally. Like there's only a few polities that do.
I mean, their minds would be entirely different from how we think. Like even if they're asleep in a human body, a dolphin is not going to think the same way as a human.
To give you an idea, one of the simplest differences between even humans and apes, humans are the only apes that actually use smiling not as a threat display.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, every other species of ape actually uses smiles as a threat display. They can, however, learn that with humans it's not, and those that are raised by people tend to can smile like that. It's not it's the showing of teeth that does it. Uh,
And
Upturned lips
yeah,
are
no.
not seen as that usually.
And then there's also the artificial intelligences.
Also, a cat
Uh,
uplift, if they're slow blinking at you, that means they really like you.
like with artificial intelligences, they don't even have bodies. They this actually honestly is an interesting point that you probably have an entire novel series on.
And then
Just
there's the
expo
reclaimers, which are people who seek to, get Earth back.
The Catholics support it, specifically to get ruins from the Vatican and other holy places.
A lot of religions support it, actually.
Um,
The problem is getting to Earth and back is a pain in the ass.
yep. Though there is
Although
massive
expeditions do
effort.
occasionally return, although sometimes they have to be quarantined and shot apart. Sometimes there's triumphant, sometimes you have to blow them up. There
Though
are transmissions from people on Earth, but no, don't believe them. Probably don't believe them. In fact, don't even
uh,
listen to it because odds are pretty good that you'll turn into a gibbering mind slave.
uh, they have, however, created habitat arcs throughout the system and on other worlds that contain basically the seed vault, the I guess genetic information, all species, books, art, all of our artifacts. Essentially, we have shot out throughout the galaxy,
Just in
throughout the
case the
universe.
Titans come back, yeah.
Um, and if not,
Sapiens, they're the silent majority. These are the uplifts, AGIs, and transhumans that promote equal rights for all. These are the more moderate of the lot.
socialites are, well, they're
They're now kind of the new political group because they're kind of the neo royalty.
yep.
Because again,
Uh,
reputation's currency.
and and then here's the ultimates, which they have asceticism, fascism, but also meritocracy, which uh how?
Yep, and it's formed by an Indian mercenary that created a security firm.
with a mix of Confucianism, capitalism, and objectivism. Add Poseidism in there, and we'd have a true threat on our hands.
And they escaped right before the fall because they were about to be tried for war crimes. So they essentially ducked into space to avoid trial. And when the fall happened, they lost their original base in space to the Titans, but they themselves survived and became very useful during the early regainment of humanity's, the redevelopment of humanity. They were very useful in creating some form of society initially, and they used the money from that to build their new weird hyper transhumanist state. The ultimate Ronin. Yeah, you can tell that they cut them down because, again, they don't want anyone to play that because Although I will say that, aside from their handling of the inner sphere and they were just blatantly delusional with their anarchist take of, because they covered problems with most of the other ones, and then they just tried to ignore them with that was kind of annoying.
Um, then next is the hypercore. They finally explain what it is, which is the defining characteristic is eagerness to adopt and exploit new technologies. Um,
Which
hypercores are,
that's basically just a corporation.
I guess I guess they can kind of do it faster with less input, so to speak. As they say, a classic example of a hypercorp is little more than a smart contracted ALI spun up to manage a specific opportunity, such as auctioning licenses for a new proprietary nanofab blueprint. Once it stores all the transactions on distributed tamper-proof holochain crypto ledgers, it dissolves.
Up. I always hate that the delusion that our modern religions would actually last into the far future in recognizable term. Christianity wouldn't even last 2,000 years without morphing into multiple reforms. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, Squirrel Killer. It's a little weird that religion as a whole hasn't evolved into some weird fucking trains of thought.
Well, this is only 10 years after the fall,
Yeah,
and
but when was the fall? Hundreds of years after
no,
modern day?
it, I would give it about 100 years. Like it's kind of about 100 years from our time.
That's still enough. That's still 100 years potential reform, though. Variety of new religious thought occurred in the last century pretty
And,
easily,
and I,
so.
I do believe there are, but
I mean, to give you an
institutions like
idea, Baha'i literally was founded in the 1840s. So,
uh, and I believe there are new religions, but like the Catholic Church as an institution would stay.
yeah, but in the last 100 years, we had the Vatican II reforms, as well as the splintering of the old Catholics, which ignored Vatican II, to the point where you're starting to see anti-popes reappear. Although those are considered radical even by most. You also see within the last 200 years the growth of Wahhabism in Islam.
That's right. And I
Mormonism
guess
as a religion was founded in the 1840s. So, yeah, there should be some. I'm not expecting, what was it, the Orange Catholic Bible that's like basically the fusion of, like, what is it,
uh,
Buddhism and Hinduism with Christianity, like in Dune. I'm not expecting that, but
I thought it also had something to do with is like a branch of Islam. Well, that might have been the
yeah, they
um,
eventually later on it did, but still.
um,
Like within a
but
hundred years, for all I know,
it,
there could be an entirely new strain of like Christianity or Islam. Yeah,
the thing is, these are anarchists. That I don't think they know much about religion.
uh, they they might know a
They
little
might.
bit. They might know at least some basics. We're just pointing that out.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a little weird they're called hypercorporations when I think that should really specify to those that are so fucking powerful that they basically are the state.
It
Which they
seems
kind of are,
hyper.
but kind of not.
You know, I think hyper comes just from the speed of it.
Though that's weird because they say they're an evolution of megacorporations, which in dystopian sci-fi terms mean they're so powerful they basically run parallel to the government. You'd think hyper would be where they've completely overthrown the government.
Uh, I yeah, I I I don't
I
really
don't
know
I
what
don't
they're.
I don't dislike the term. It's just a little bit
Um, Hypercorp is associated with the term
Also,
hypercorporation is.
establishing capitalism 2.0 for as long as it doesn't choke on its own effluence. Really, really not showing your partisan hackery there,
They do say that hypercorporation is now applied to every for-profit organization,
which is
whether
pretty
they use the
stupid.
hypercorp business model or not.
Which is really
Um,
fucking stupid because even cooperatives that are run for community benefits are profit driven because you
no,
need profit to actually fucking thrive.
no, that's exploiting labor.
Look,
The
I
clearly
know
not
I
discredited
know it's
or
kind of post
incompetent
scarcity,
labor
but
theory of value.
I think they're just kind of delusional. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's post scarcity. I kind of get it, but on the other hand, you still need to. You're still technically profiting via your own labor by making sure you don't fucking starve to death when you use the fabricator or you do your community uplift.
yeah, but I'm not forced to do work. My labor is
You
equal
are
to the
forced
value
to
of the
do work
product.
because you get societally shamed, so and destroyed and kicked out. So, no, it's just this new boss, different, similar to the old, as far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
now they go up on different
Now, don't get me wrong,
businesses.
it's still better than Hypercorporation Nightmare State, but that's not hard because these are like cartoonish bad guys.
So, from the various corporations, the agriculture, hydroponics, making, I guess real food as well as fake food.
Yeah, there's a variety of stuff. Let's be fair. Do we really need to cover all of the many businesses that exist, types that exist?
Uh, no,
Because we
there's
we know what agritech and pharma are. Banking and finances are similar but different because, well, post scarcity. Cognitive scientists and uplifts basically they just go into different companies. Like Cognite is the big factor in cognitive science and uplifts because they're the ones who do psychosurgery and shit,
there is a fun media company called from Titan called Monster Raging Goblin Cock News Network.
which is just their take on Monster Raving Loony Party because that's a funny name. I don't hate it. I'm just pointing it out. That's where they got the name from. These are basically they go into a little bit of detail about each of the 20 for the consortium. Because another one's Pathfinder Corporation, which basically covers the Pandoran gates. Their security,
Oh,
there's just so many options and stuff.
Academy survived. Uh, is it Blackwater, right? What Blackwater was
They
before?
they change their fucking name all the time. I don't even bother.
Yeah, yeah, no, Blackwater's still around as
I don't
as
even
Academy.
bother.
Um, Shipping, Comet Express.
Yep,
Isn't
it,
that
that's owned by Matt
Futurama?
Groening. It's kind of amusing that they do this because it's a good. That's probably one of the reasons they don't charge for this book. Really, they ask for money, but they don't charge. Mainly because if they did, they get destroyed from
Well,
some of the references.
that's
Not all the
just a
references, but
reference for name.
some shitty company might try to sue them.
And to be quite honest, in the future people would be doing that.
Hey, here's the religious groups. Can faith survive the death of God? Nietzsche turned
Um,
out to be half right. Transhumanity struck God a blow, but it took the fall to deal the killing stroke.
so religion after the fall. Um,
God is dead. Long live God.
Uh, Certainly, younger generations took the mask off of religion, seeing that's just another ideology. But what guidance can ancient doctrine give regarding gene fixing, AI, or forking? What deity?
Tilts fedora smugly.
Yeah. Um,
I'm not even that religious. I'm just pointing out this has strong
yeah.
fedora energy.
Um,
Kind of annoying, kind of
they
pathetic.
basically have said, yeah, they're basically saying spiritual beliefs are at an all-time low. Although you would think faith would come back.
I mean, after they almost died due to their own fucking creation, yeah, there should be a revival in some respects.
So Christianity, but they do
When
say
you're
that
one
it.
of God's chosen people, that only applies technically to Judaism, you fucking morons.
Where does that say?
Titans did the rest. It's difficult to cling to the belief that you're one of God's chosen people when death is so indiscriminate. So this is really just fuck the Abrahamic religions, yeah, that's very strong fedora energy.
Well, actually, this is being written by the Jovian point of view character.
Really?
Yeah. Well, guy is also with Firewall, so he probably
Oh,
does have
oh,
some
you mean the
assembly.
guy who happened to basically give up on his faith because his horrible junta state decided to let children die because fuck you? You know,
No, I don't think.
the one that's there. He's one of the good ones. You know, one
No,
of the
I
good
mean,
ones.
yeah, the guy didn't give up on his religion, but he just knows that yeah, the Jovian Republic isn't perfect.
Translation:
Um,
He's one of the good ones.
it's that the church remains a
I
cornerstone
know
of the
what
Bible.
this is. This is one of the good ones. You know, the thing you use when you hate someone and want them dead, but you want to pretend that you're not bigoted.
Let's see. The Vietnamese Catholics are still around. Episcopalians, Baptists. Um,
So let's
there's
take a quick look. Yeah.
Quakers. Quakers still exists, and the Russian Orthodox Church.
The few Catholics that made it off Earth were naturally drawn to the Jovian Republic. Wait, so I like how it's almost total Catholic death for some fucking reason. That's a little dumb given that
Yeah.
also the Catholic here's another really stupid point of view because these people are fedora tipping morons. Catholic Church unironically tends to be more progressive when it comes to scientific advances than the Protestants.
Well, they do actually say that the church disagrees with the sea beat over specific
Oh,
policies.
they only sometimes though, because the religion's a shackle of the mind. It's an opiate of the masses.
It,
Even though Bakunin told Marx he was a big retarded piece of shit.
it does seem to be
I'm
that
pointing. Keep in mind, Bakunin thought Marx was a smug, controlling idiot. Keep that in mind.
it seems that the church is more on the side of uh, ego or re-sleeving and morphological freedom. That's their big concern.
I just find it weird that they decide to focus on on just Catholicism basically being that. It's a
Yeah,
little
I mean,
weird. It's a little weird because honestly, it'd be the Protestants that cause more shit in my experience,
oh,
just because of
yeah.
fundamentalism.
Um, Hinduism.
The
There's
Russian Orthodox Church, total Orthodox Church death, apparently.
Hindus. They still exist. Largest is on Luna.
One of the
Um,
hallmarks of the oldest organized religion is its ability to adapt, simply bends in the river of time. Also, a fuckload of militaristic expansion and wars against them.
and
People
also not
forget
really
that
having
part.
a standardized religion.
That too. And last but not least,
Um,
don't forget state seriously backing it because it's one of the few things holding it together.
and the caste system still exists in some respect.
Hmm.
Untouchables tend to be sleeved into synthmorphs. Um,
So
Islam,
one of the things which is an interesting point of view, I do find it a bit interesting. And again, let's see. Maybe they're not going to go full fedora and say fuck everyone but Christianity. No, fuck Christianity, but everyone else is fine. Maybe they won't
uh,
do that level of dumb fedora shit. Maybe they won't be mentally challenged and conflate Islam with race. Maybe they
no,
won't.
they won't. They don't. They
Thank
do
fuck.
they do highlight that Islam, I guess, was becoming more humanist. Many early space colonists came from Muslim countries.
Nah, fuck you. This is fedora tipping. This is
Um,
classical atheist fuck you dad, but every other
yeah.
religion is taller. Their conservative attitudes to women's sexuality and receiving have largely been discarded. Go fuck yourself, you self-righteous pricks. You're really
um,
telling me that some horrendous strain of Wahhabism isn't going to just go massively insane? You're really telling me that there wouldn't be radical members of Islam that wouldn't just say kill all synthmorphs because they're clearly puppets of the fucking Titans. You're really going to not say that?
well, I could say this. I'm sure a lot of them probably uh, committed martyrdom against the Titans.
I'm just pointing
I,
out that this is very strong fedora tipping energy.
I mean, considering Mecca was destroyed, yeah, I'm pretty sure some of these people would have completely been just, I'm gonna sacrifice myself and blow up the Titans.
Yes, but also like you're gonna ignore the fact that okay. I just think it's a little weird that the only one that seems to be dying is Christianity.
I,
Very strong fedora energy.
well, next up is Judaism. The Shoah nearly killed us. The fall damn near finished the job. Israel is once again lost, and the squabbles over our homeland now seem trivial. Trivial. Welcome to the age of Meshuggah. Um, Jewish people will survive. That's never been a question, but yeah, their Judaism is kind of dying out, it seems.
It doesn't
Um,
help that the interpretation on what happens when you re-slave, are you still Jewish?
well, yeah, that is probably the best Jewish answer. Depends on the person you ask.
Yeah.
Um,
So
because
here's the thing. This one I actually can understand as a concept because it's the smallest religion, and Israel is probably glassed off the face of the earth due to the glorious Titan fall.
yeah,
I mean, if they
uh, uh,
glassed in Mecca, they're gonna glass Jerusalem. You know they would. They also probably glassed Rome.
no, Vatican. They said the Vatican's still around, or at least that it can probably scourge the remnants of it. So not glass, but probably blown up. Uh, Technically, the Israeli government still exists. On the habitat Horeb, uh, there is a remaining yeshiva school. Most of this is on Luna, um, and there are Jewish reclaimers.
So as for Mormons,
Uh,
they're still around. As a younger faith, they didn't get quite caught up in bioconservative attitudes like other systems. They still
and
lost
I
most of their believers during the fall, but their embrace of re-sleeving and ego casting mean more of them got off of Earth.
um, they're going to be making a uh, generation ship with a bunch of people in cold storage.
Yeah,
They're
I,
they're
I
heading outside of Earth.
I'm gonna be real with you. This still has strong fedora energy.
Pay. Let's see. Next, pagans. Um,
Yeah, pagans are gonna be tiny.
they're on the Jovian Republic as well.
Like
The Wiccans
honestly,
are teaming up with the Catholics
okay.
and the Satanists. They still exist.
Such edge. Wow.
And then post-fall religions.
I'm sorry. It's just I can smell the energy, and it's sad because we had a good little segment, and then it's just turning into more shit,
Neo-Buddhism,
which is pretty
which
stupid.
suffering can be mitigated with technology, and that the extension of life will lead all of transhumanity to enlightenment.
You can
Techno-creationism.
okay. Here's the thing. Straight up. You can definitely tell they're not that familiar with the religion because they would
Yeah.
actually. Here's the thing. It wouldn't be called Neo-Buddhism. It would be based on a specific variant of school. Uh, they would probably call it something depending on what it would be. It also would not probably be Mahayana. Mahayana has the most It would actually probably be more Theravada, actually, in terms of tradition. Theravada is the closest to actually being a non-religious philosophy. These are the words of a people that don't know shit other than the Dalai Lama, which is part of the Vajrayana sect. You can definitely tell. Okie dokie, let's take a look at techno-creationism,
They believe the
because
fall was
Neo-Buddhism is incorrect.
um, the fall was nothing less than a sign from God laying bare transhumanity's sins. They seek a new form of enlightenment through technology, societal engineering, and collaboration with aliens. Uh, so
That's not really a religion, and it's not very well designed.
it seems to be just a cult. Right?
Well, I
Well,
mean,
then
these are the people that try. These are the people that can't try to think from the point of views of others outside of their anarchist bubble. So
there's Titan worship.
which that's fair.
Yep. And Xenodeism, which is these small cults that basically have said that the aliens that are existing or have existed, they're gods.
These are some pretty shit religious points of like. These are some pretty shit post-fall religions, to be honest.
I mean, one thing I will, it has been 10 years, so
No, there should like. You're really telling me that there's not. I don't know. It's just I get it, but like it's handled in one of the stupider ways.
oh,
You're really
no,
telling
I
me
what
there's not some weird cultist man who's like not into any of these? Like you're really telling me there's no new you're telling me there's no new, say, Bob or Joseph Smith or
I got an idea.
Jim
Uh,
Jones or Marshall
oh,
Applewhite?
they're called Brinkers.
Yeah, but you're really telling me that there's not a Brinker religion that's gaining rapid popularity out there? 10
Well,
years
I would
after
assume,
after a horrible apocalypse, there should be something like that. It doesn't
I'm
have to
pretty
be
sure.
Christian. You could actually, what would be an interesting concept? Someone tries to bring back one of the many Gnosticist faiths.
And the Titans were the false god,
Yeah,
and that's why they were stopped. I got another one. I guess it'd be the worshiping of the void. Basically, that the blackness between the stars, that darkness is itself something to be worshipped.
yeah. I
Just
mean,
this,
there should be some
it's a
form of weird.
nihilistic religion.
Yeah,
Um, let's see what else there is. Just want to see how I've left because it
because
is getting
this
pretty late.
chapter is fucking long, man.
Um,
Jesus Christ. Okay, we're actually okay. We're almost done. Actually, we're good.
okay.
Because
So
we just have to look
next,
at firewall and criminals, which we can kind
so
of wrap up
yeah,
criminals pretty quick.
criminal groups.
There's a bunch of
Uh,
criminals. One of
the
them
Ghoul,
is Legul.
uh, the Saint
Legul.
Catherine Tongs, which from New Quebec, so I'm assuming they're Canadian.
Yeah, though I don't really know about the Tongs. I think are I don't know. Wild Hunt, which are
The
basically murderers.
Hidden
Oh,
Concern.
what did the Mormon section say? Yeah, they mostly
Oh,
they got wrecked, but they're building like essentially arc cities that they're gonna send out in space.
yeah, they have a million Mormons backed up in cold
And because they
storage.
were less opposed to transplanting their consciousness than other religions for some fucking reason, they got wrecked, but they were in better shape than some.
And if I recall, there was either a Mormon or a Jesuit that tried to, um, uh, I guess, be a missionary to the factors.
Basically, out of all the religions, the only ones that are dinosaurs and dying out are the Jews and apparently Christians for some fucking reason. Meanwhile, Islam is totally fine for no real logical, sane fucking reason. But okay, okay. Oh, actually, here's a thing. You know what should be one of the new post-fall religions? A new variant of Islam where a guy has proclaimed himself the Mahdi. Because if you think about it, if you think about it, if you just have a guy, here's a horribly dumb idea. A guy proclaims himself the Mahdi, and he teams up with the guy who claims to be Isa, and they survived the fall together, and they are claiming that they are going to create the unified Islamic government as proposed in the Islamic version of Revelations.
Oh,
Wouldn't that have been an interesting post-fall religion?
yeah.
Because that
Then
is the
again,
thing.
these people
Isa
would
is
have
supposed
to.
to come back alongside the Mahdi to do this.
I mean,
Isa
then
being their take on Jesus.
but then these people would have had to have read religious books, and they're not
It's
going to be
clear
reading that
that,
conservative garbage.
especially since they still think for some reason Wiccans wouldn't also get destroyed and blown up in the fucking fall. I'm sorry, it's just there's such a relatively small community. It'd be pretty easy for them to get wiped, you know. Same with Asatru, to be honest. Now, what you could have is after the fall, a sort of like a weird neo-pagan revivalist movement came about. I could actually even see that with Asatru because, from their point of view, Ragnarok happened.
Oh no, you know what? I have an idea. It is a Titan worshipping group, but it's both. They worship the Titans from Greece, but it's actually the Titans they're worshiping. They just view them as like the gods have the Titans have returned, and so we got to worship them.
That could be interesting,
That's-
like a weird neo-pagan Hellenic cult that worships them as. I think though, unironically, if you had a Asatru resurge, you could actually argue that it's because to them Ragnarok happened, and the very few survivors actually are preaching this is the new brave world. Because one of the things people forget about Ragnarok is it's the end of the old world, but it's going to be the beginning of the new, which hilariously means GW wasn't exactly stupid when they did Age of Sigmar, because guess what? Since it's tied to German and the Norskins, Ragnarok is supposed to be the end of the old and the beginning of the new,
Speaking of
which
Warhammer,
is a
I did
little
think of it.
cleverer than I give it, but it's still crap because it killed fantasy.
I do have another idea. It'd be an ex-human religion that straight up is worshiping the Chaos Gods. Just like, fuck it. It's the end of the world. I'm
I could
putting
see
my
it.
faith into this fictional deity, and
You, you
they
know
do
you know what they should have done?
psychosurgery and genetic mutation.
Oh, they were sending Mormons into space because, from their point of view, they're currently in the same situation that Moroni was, where everything's falling apart and they might die out. This is their way of making sure the message in the Golden Tablets continues.
I think it's a reference to Expanse.
It's actually a reference to Battlestar Galactica.
Oh yeah, that's right. That as well.
It's a big reference to Battlestar Galactica. Those are the new 12 tribes that are going to be sent out and try to head back to Earth. Oh, and unironically, the Titans would be the Cylons in this case for them. It's literally Battlestar Galactica. Holy shit. Speaking of religions, I'm surprised they didn't mention an uplift religion.
Well, what would they worship? And which uplift?
It depend. They should have uplift cults though.
Oh no, no, I got a shitpost a religion from the octopi and the dolphins. They worship Cthulhu.
Uh, uh,
It's like it's the flying spaghetti monster thing, but for these guys.
you know what also would be really funny for the ape uplifts? They literally just as a shitpost venerate Harambe.
I was thinking King Kong.
King Kong would also be pretty good. Like straight up, you'd think some uplift cults would be a thing, right? Like in the new post, not necessarily post fall, but like new religions that you'd see.
Yeah, but what would they worship is the thing.
Well, the
They
thing is, they can't be
that's the big thing.
anthropocentric.
They don't have a culture. And here's the thing: gods are entirely anthropocentric.
Not necessarily. You can come up with very weird variations.
Yeah, but we're humans making up the concept.
D- don't think about it.
Or AI. Actually, what would AI worship?
uh, they venerate Turing as their metaphorical prophet.
Or no, wouldn't
They venerate Alan Turing as their prophet.
I don't know if he would be the prophet. Be a
He
saint.
is the one to actually it could be a cult of prophets. You have Turing, Asimov, Clark. It's a mixture of actual there's also Babbage, Lovelace. Like it's a variety of what they call the prophets of the singularity.
And of course the great one.
Unironically, Ape Uplift's worshipping Donkey Kong would be fucking hilarious.
Oh no, no, I got another one. AGI shitpost religion. The Omnissiah.
The Omnissiah would
Described as
also work.
they worship every AI that's in fiction. It's just like the main ones. Like what would it be?
I'm envisioning. Oh, that's not necessarily good because you could also see them worshiping the broken god from this SCP Foundation.
All right. Well, then again, we kind of don't have a standard continuity on what that is.
They're trying to, and that's kind of ruining the magic because they're trying to explain the cosmology of the setting. So
It's
anyway,
a
Wild
multi.
Hunt, they just kind of kidnap people. The Hidden Concern is essentially the mafia comprised of neo octopi, which is amazing.
I
The
want to see
octopi
Sopran.
gangsters.
I want to see the Sopranos, but with Neo Octopi.
I'm envisioning the scene. I'm envisioning like the scene from like you see this octopi like looking over their dead over their look at how they massacred my boy, waving his tentacles. Intelligent Design, the ID crew. They're best known for their digital crimes. They're hackers. The Night
Troll
Cartel,
farms, ego trafficking. The Night Cartel um, is a combination of multiple mafias from different ethnicities.
which is funny because one of the reasons the mafias don't usually work together is pretty much due to those ethnicities.
Though the Night Cartel, you know what it's based on,
Yeah.
La Cosa Nostra.
Yep. Nine Lives, which is a soul trafficking syndicate. They're pretty bad. Pax Familia. I think that's the yeah, that's the one.
This this is
It's
the
the one.
one that it's every member is a fork or a clone of its founder, Claudia Amberlin. Creates clones through genetics, sexual reproduction, through forks, psychosurgery. So yeah, they literally are every single person, which that's really cool. Actually, there is a like possible like adventure I saw where um one of the there is starting to get independence or is reaching out to the players because they believe that some of the others might be like infected.
And then last but not least,
So
Pirates. There's also the Triads, which it's a little bit weird that the Chinese Triads are their own organization, but also not at the same time.
some of them were assumed at the cartel, but 14K is still around. Sun On Yi or Sun Yeon.
I'm surprised. I'm wondering. I'm actually a bit surprised you're not seeing a revival of the White Lotus Society with like weird millenarian Buddhism insanity. Because the
Uh,
Triads actually partially originated from the White Lotus Society. Partially. They also were their own criminal organization. And last but not least, Firewall, which straight up their big thing is to keep existence going.
They are the main character.
They're who your player characters usually work for.
uh, Um, they were founded by a bunch of different organizations, both government and independent. On
Remnants of
yeah, how
governments,
yeah,
independent, corporative. It's basically one big body. And their
how
big
do
thing
yeah
is to watch out for exurgent virus threats, uh, crazy psycho terrorists, and last but not least, Titans.
they are kind. I mean, the best thing they are kind of like the SCP,
They're a bit
although
SCP, but I think they're more like Delta Green slash Men in Black slash Feds.
a global cult coalition from the Foundation as well, because they will not contain Titan artifacts. They'll blow it the fuck up.
Because yeah, you don't like you're asking to be destroyed if you don't,
And it's very autonomous, which
which
this is
makes
kind of where the
sense.
Delta. green thing comes in.
It makes sense, and it also fits because remember the ideology of the creators. It fits,
Anarchist.
but you have to keep that in mind too. But no, it does straight up make sense. You want your cells to be mostly independent. There are issues with that because you can sometimes get into what are called team killing scenarios where you fight each other on accident. But it also means that because you have a flexible organization like that, you can respond to threats relatively quickly. It also is a
The
lot easier because you don't have to have as many logistics specialists.
uh, and they have a neat little guide to firewall terminology, and the various factions as well.
Yep,
Uh,
proxies are so among proxies, there's scanners, which are the data analysts. Routers are charged with the management of the cell, and vectors deal with hacking.
erasers are those that are the cleanup crew. That when shit's gone too bad, they are the ones that will blow everything up.
And registers are the guys that essentially finance everything. They're the money men. And then there's
And
the
then
filters, which they're the ones that play PR.
and then there's the various factions. You have the backups, which are ones that are saying we're going to create bunkers and ways to survive. If everyone's wiped out, we can rebuild. Conservatives
The
are the ones
conservatives
that
are members in the firewall that tend to say using AGI is, I forget what asyncs are.
psychics.
Oh yeah, they're a thing. And so, Alien and Titan Tech is risky.
Then there's Mavericks, which are the ones that screw the rules.
They're the ones that are most likely to be horribly infected by exsurgent viruses and stuff because they play around with crap they probably shouldn't.
They are the radicals of the Inquisition.
And pragmatists are kind of your centrist equivalent.
Um, and then there are the structuralists, which want to have a more rigid hierarchical structure and also go public.
Because, yeah, the firewall is currently a secret organization, very much like the SCP Foundation or the GOC.
Uh, I mean, they're all secret, more like Delta Green, where
Like
it's a
they
conspiracy.
know they exist to a degree, but not exactly how big the thing is. But yeah, the structuralists are like, yeah, these cell things kind of work, but imagine if we could pull together with a larger bureaucracy. Like, imagine the manpower we might even be able to reclaim, like, I don't know, some near Earth space stations to observe what the fuck is going on the planet. Or maybe deactivate some of the, death fields, because there's a huge, not only debris field, but like death mines and satellite weapons and shit around the Earth. It basically going down on that planet is risking death every time.
Well, no, not just death, because you can come back from death. This is risking,
Super death.
yep,
Because
and
your last seconds, you might be infected by a mimetic virus that gets into your backups.
or not death. You get your cortical stack sucked into a server run by the Titans. We don't know what happens to you after that. We don't know if you even exist as you were.
But yeah, we kind of covered the internal factions, so we can kind of
You know?
skip this little page. And
And
before we close off, here is a map of the solar system, which does include Pluto. Aw.
I mean, it is a part of the system.
Aw, but they actually have its own image. I'm a
They also
little I'm a little surprised they don't
included
have.
Eris,
Yeah.
so
Aw.
kind of gives you a neat way of showing.
Where the main locations are, because you probably don't know where the Trojans, which are the asteroids, are.
Even though, should they technically be near the planet?
Trojans are wanderings or wanderers in the orbital field, from what I
Oh,
remember. There's also more than just Vulcanoids. They're forgetting there's a whole shitload of asteroids. So Still, it's a nice little simplified map. It's cute. And with that, and the fact that we've been going for just a shade over 3 hours because this is a dense book,
Next
uh,
are going to be all the various, uh, I guess, not just planets, but habitats and
yeah, when next we cover this book, which might, it probably won't be as long of it probably won't be as long of a break in between, because this is fascinating. We'll cover the
yeah,
different planets. So,
because
mhm.
because for instance, there are people living not on the sun but around it.
Oh yeah, because
Dolphins,
there are what are called
whales.
volcanoids.
Yeah, they which this is where I'd say a lot of the writing shines in just how weird and diverse they can make these habitats.
The book's mechanics are where it shines, and when they're not being partisan hacks, it really shines. In short, my biggest problem with the book is that they have a bias and they don't bother to even try suppressing it. And before we head off, Jim, yeah, the Kuiper Belt. So most people have heard of the asteroid belt. It's essentially a whole bunch of asteroids and smaller space debris that orbits in between Mars and Jupiter. Beyond Neptune, there is an even bigger asteroid belt known as the Kuiper Belt, which is supposed to be something like, I think, what was it, 100 times bigger than the asteroid belt, with planetoids the size of actual planets in there. To give you an idea, I think Eris is larger than Pluto, and I know Sedna is out there. And Sedna is also pretty big. There's a bunch of large bodies like Haumea Makemake. There's also the Goblin, which is a weird fucking body that orbits beyond our sun's heliosphere, which is the influence of our solar system. Sedna
So it's
also does that too.
so it's extrasolar.
Some of the Kuiper objects are extrasolar, yes. There's also rumors of there being a ninth planet out there somewhere, Planet X.
Wait, why are we calling it? Should we call it IX?
Because X stands for unknown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
If you're wondering why Planet X is a thing, it's similar to how we originally thought there might have been a planet before Mercury known as Vulcan. I'm not kidding. There was an idea that to explain the weirdness, because Mercury had a weird gravitational field that until you knew about relativistic mechanics, you wouldn't be able to explain. So the best solution was if you put a little planet before it, it made sense. There's similar disturbances in Neptune's orbit, but also especially among some of the Kuiper objects. Like the fact that Sedna and there's a small class of little planetoids called sednoids, which have these weird elliptical orbits. There's thinking there might be a fairly large, not quite it's not, maybe an ice giant or a super Earth out there.
I
You
mean,
know,
in the solar system?
yeah, like beyond Neptune's orbit into the Kuiper belt because of things like the Kuiper cliff and the Kuiper cliff is basically after a certain point the Kuiper belt thins out a lot. Like it becomes a lot less dense. And on top of that, you have some again objects that have weird orbits. There might be a large planet out there. Not necessarily gas giant big, but we're talking like anywhere between I think 3 to 10 times Earth's size.
Just
There might be. We can't
space.
confirm it.
Space is so cool, but why couldn't it be? Why does it have to be so big and so far away?
My question is why didn't they try to be nuanced with all factions and not be partisan hacks towards both their politics and what religion they dislike?
Oh, well, it's
Because it kind of
politics.
poisons the book. It does kind of poison the book.
It is politics. It's the one thing that, even if we understand the universe, we'll never be able to explain.
I'm just now envisioning like one of the Brinkers going, "I'm going to the only place where politics cannot be made stupid, and I don't have to listen to crazy idealistic anarchist and dumb neo-fascist space."
Nice!
And he goes to the Kuiper Belt.
He discovers a bunch of factors bickering there, and he's like, damn it!
Darn it! I have to deal with more monkey business. We are not monkeys, ape. So anyway, let's call it up here. Uh,
Yep.
Again, next week it'll probably either be autistic analysis for more of crap book. I think it's called Complete Arcane because there's Complete Mage and then there's complete. Yeah, it's Complete Arcane. Sorry, I had a brain fart moment. Next week will either be autistic analysis of Complete Arcane, where one of my favorite classes of all time gets brought up, or it might be we try to create a Rifts character. And last but not least, I found a book that I had for a while called Gaslands that I might want to show off. Are you interested in the post-apocalypse car racing and dueling?
Well, yeah.
Especially since, from what I skimmed, I'm not sure if it's a minis game. It might be a minis game.
I do remember, didn't Games Workshop do, was either an RPG or it was a miniature game called Dark Future that was like that?
They had some interesting games, yes. So, as we're about to head off, make sure to go to our Discord for any new people. I have a Discord link in the description, and like and subscribe if you wish. Just throwing it out there. And again, feel free to get a copy of the book. We also leave that in the description. And with that, have an excellent night. And make sure to follow that NAP.
Yep. Night.